What's in a name? Everybody's got one. It's an identification, a label, a brand. How do you make your name? How do you earn it? A name can make you feel a certain way just by hearing it. It can stir an emotion or wake a memory. Sometimes you represent a name. Sometimes it represents you. But some names are different.
25 victories for Michael Andretti.
Some names mean more. Some names are a legacy, a family, and a team.
Almost clips the grass. Hey, Dad, watch this. Marco Andretti to the inside, and now Michael.
Half a lap lead, clutch and coast. Save fuel, clutch and coast.
Ryan Hunter-Reay wins the Indianapolis 500. What a win! Zach Peak victorious. Marco Andretti wins over Kanan Dixon.
Full throttle, full throttle, full throttle. Checkered flag! You just won the Indy 500, baby! Oh my God! Awesome job!
Yeah, some names are a little different. Some names mean everything.
Four seems to be a magic number when it comes to finding stability. 4 legs on a chair, 4 tires on a car, 4 corners on a racetrack. It's a nice even number where things are predictable. Tonight we're going to lop off one of those corners and mix things up with just 3. This is the first of 3 rounds of the 2021 Catalyst 317 Triple Crown for the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series. There's money on the line, a grid as deep as it can get, and a track bigger than any other oval on the schedule. Except that's the tricky bit. This 400-mile test of aptitude and endurance isn't on an oval. We're in Long Pond, Pennsylvania at the trickiest triangle there is. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman for the 6th round of the season here from Pocono Raceway here in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. Tom, welcome. This is a huge, wide, fast racetrack. Intimidating, yes. Tricky, also yes. A blast? Definitely yes.
And it doesn't get much more different than this, and what is going to be really fun to watch is who rises to the top. We've seen some new names pop to the top in practice, and there are certainly a very small number of people who have enjoyed success this season in the Indy Elite Series, mainly our championship leader, Christopher Demerit. Can someone dethrone him with one fewer corner?
He has led and won at every single race that has not been on a road course this season. Adam Crane is the only other driver to have seen victory lane. We'll see if he can jump back up there and try to grab a victory. Qualifying already underway here tonight. Tom, I mentioned that there's prizes on the line, and a huge thanks to Catalyst 317 for coming on board to sponsor this Triple Crown event, specializing in digital content, video production, communications, PR, graphic design, photography, and freelance writing. The team at Catalyst 317 is there to lead your next project through every phase. And they've come on board to help us out this season with the Triple Crown events. We've got 2 more of them to run, but 1.5 times the points on the line here as well tonight, Tom. So 160 laps, 400 miles, and 1.5 points or times the points of a normal round. That means if you have a problem today, it's going to cost you all the way down the season.
And it's definitely a big opportunity for some of the drivers who have had decent seasons, but maybe needed that extra little boost to catch back up towards the front. Anybody really in the top 10, especially the drivers in the top 5, if you have success here tonight, you can close a gap much easier than by working your butt off the rest of the rounds. Also looking at Indianapolis 500 and the finale at Auto Club Speedway, that will round out the Triple Crown. But those 3 tracks, those 3 races are going to have a lot of weight to them.
And we've already mentioned that this track is known as the Tricky Triangle. The reason why, Tom, it's got 3 different corners, all in decreasing banking from one to the next. Long Pond, Pennsylvania, just about 5,200 people live here. This racetrack constructed in 1971, and the corners here modeled after Trenton, Indianapolis, and Milwaukee. Trenton, turn 1, Indianapolis, turn 2, and Milwaukee, that is the last corner, turn number 3. Decreasing in banking each time, so as the lap goes on, it gets a little bit harder, Tom. Qualifying has happened. And at the top of the board, Jason Brophy in the number 88. He sits up there. Andrew Kinsella second. Henry Bennett third. Brian Carey fourth. Andreas Ike finally didn't finish third last week at Texas. He's currently 5th.
Unfortunately, he finished off the podium for the first time in this championship, but I'm really fascinated by this qualifying order right now as we have a little over 4 minutes left to go. Most of the drivers have turned in their laps, almost everybody, in fact, but some very different names than we're used to seeing at the front for any sort of results, whether it be racing or qualifying, and these are the drivers that can really make some waves tonight in the championship by having success, especially maybe the best poised for that would be Kinsella there in the 14 car. He sits second place in qualifying. He's third in the championship, but has quite a ways to go to catch up to Andreas Ike and Christopher Demerit. That'll be a car to watch tonight, I think.
And there's some names of some drivers on this list that I know are looking for better luck. One of them qualified 9th. Wilson Nito has qualified on pole twice this season. Both those races, he ended up crashing out of the event. So Wilson Nito looking for a climb forward. Liam Quinn, also, we haven't seen a whole lot of him this season. He will roll off in 6th. Tony Schowen, Philip Kraus, the reigning champion. He starts 11th. Christopher and our points leader Demerit down in 15th. That's about middle of the pack here, Tom. And we're going to get into our keys to the race here in a few minutes. But one of the keys to the race is consequences for mistakes. And it doesn't matter if you're the points leader, you've won 3 of the 4 races this season. If you're in 15th, you're at the whim of everyone else's mistakes, not just your own.
I think one of the other things that'll be fascinating for tonight is we have, in my mind, one extra corner to deal with, because a lot of times the ovals drive as 2 corners, and you may have to adjust your setup on these cars. It's something we don't talk about a lot, but this is an open setup series where the drivers can adjust everything and anything they want about the setup on these cars. There are people who kind of head up each race team's setup for building these setups for these cars, but they've got an extra factor to deal with, and you mentioned it already. There's basically 3 different corners, 3 different banks, 3 different radiuses, all of those things you have to take into account when you're setting up for each one. So maybe certain cars will be stronger in certain corners based on setup, and it's another variable.
And another variable is the weather. Here today, 76 in the air, 110 degrees Fahrenheit on the racetrack. I'd expect that to climb here a little bit, and because the track temp is so high, the grip level is going to go down. So you might have to adjust your setup throughout the race, Tom, to change and adjust to those rising temperatures, and also keep an eye on your tire temps as well. If your right front tire has a problem here in any of these corners, it's going to hurt in the virtual world at least. So keep an eye on your tire wear. Make sure that you're not running camber and caster and settings that are going to cause tire failure. But the problem is those settings are locked in now once you've qualified. The only things you can adjust your weight jacker, your tire pressure as you go throughout the race. So there are things you can do here, Tom, but some of the stuff, the major stuff, has already been sorted out, and you're sort of got what you got at this point.
And if you haven't been following us with this season, every oval race has really been won on pit strategy more so than on-track proper wheel-to-wheel racing. We haven't really had that photo finish happen yet this year, or in the first 3 oval rounds. So I'm really curious also to know some of the drivers that maybe didn't get the qualifying effort they want. Maybe they don't have the raw pace, but maybe that's okay because you still have a long race ahead of us to get your wits right with the pit stop strategies and all of that.
Here's Matt Hollabaugh coming across the line. Remember how good he was at Texas last week? He's really deep in the field, 23rd, so look for this car to go forward. I think he's got this car set up for race pace, and I think we'll see him charge through the grid. I don't think he's qualified very well in the past, but we will see him likely climb forward. Wilson Nito out on track as well, getting some laps in here before the end of qualifying. Still only 9th. He cannot improve. He's already run his laps. Matt Hollabaugh, I think, also just getting some practice in here at the end. And you're going to need every lap you can get. 160 revolutions around Pocono tonight. This is going to be a pretty long race, and you have to start thinking right from the drop of the green flag about your tire and fuel strategy. When are you going to pit, and do you want to be the leader of the pack, wasting all of your fuel on empty air? I think you'd rather be tucked in behind and treat this like a marathon.
It's another driver that'll be cool to watch tonight. Qualified 4th right now provisionally. That is Brian Carey. Kind of a nightmare start to the season. Had a DNF at Homestead. Got a top 10, 9th place at Phoenix, and then another DNF at Barber. Finally broke through and got a podium last week, 3rd place for Brian Carey, and he sits in the top 10 in the championship, right in 10th. But that breakthrough last week jumped him up 8 positions in the championship, and now he's looked to be having quite a bit of pace tonight at Pocono. This could be another driver that really has an opportunity to capitalize if others don't have a good night.
So the bottom handful of drivers from John Downing on back are done for the day. Again, only going to allow the front 33 drivers in this field, so they're going to drop off the tail end here as we get rolling for the Catalyst 317-400 from Pocono Raceway. You're watching Sim TV. I'm Kyle Heyer alongside 2-time Pirelli World Challenge champion and 4-time IMSA race winner Tom O'Gorman as we get prepared for 160 revolutions. This race, if it goes green from start to finish, is going to be about an hour and 49 minutes. This is a long one here, Tom, so we're going to have to get settled in. Let's roll through our starting lineup, and it's all going to start with a driver on pole tonight, and that, of course, is Austin Espedy in the number 7. Riley Thompson will line up alongside him in the 56. Henry Bennett in row number 2 with Chris Cahoe to his outside in the 57. AJ Musselman will roll off in 6th spot alongside, or 5th spot rather, with Lester Rorschach in beside him. Then Dakota DeCienzo. I don't think this is the right order.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Thank you for catching that.
Correct order.
Well, we will have the field rolling off here in just a moment, but you can see at the front that Kinsella car. That is the teal machine there, Tom. And you were mentioning that he's probably your favorite. Why?
Well, I just think he's the highest in the championship, and he's way ahead of everybody else. He sits 3rd in the championship. Christopher Demerit is our points leader. Andreas Eich is 2nd. Adam Blocker, who I haven't actually seen on the track at all tonight, he's in the field somewhere, I think, but maybe not even. He is 4th anyway. Kingsbury is 5th. So Kinsella being the only one of those top 5 in the championship who's also top 5 on the grid here tonight. That's the car that has the biggest opportunity for me, but I'm not going to pick a favorite before I see some laps turn. Obviously, Henry Bennett is very capable. Andres Eich is up there, I think, starting 5th. And obviously, you can't rule out the pole sitter either.
Absolutely not. Let's have a look at our keys to the race here, Tom. The first of which, Triple Crown, first of 3. Remember, there is extra cash prizes on the line here tonight, but this is a big race. It feels big. It's a long race, and that's because of how important it is. So Triple Crown round 1, there's a lot of anxiety, I'm sure, for drivers about this race, and a lot of jitters rolling off into turn 1.
And then 6 wide, 5 deep. This place, we've talked a lot about the corners themselves, but it's huge. There's a massive amount of space to use on the straightaways, let alone the corners, and you have to be able to manipulate the corners as well. So lots of places to play, lots of space to play, and 6 Indy cars fit side by side pretty comfortably here.
You could land a 747 on the front straightaway here. I think it's so wide. Consequences to your mistakes, consequences to others' mistakes. It's Pocono. It's fast. It's narrow at places. If someone else makes a mistake, you better be ready to avoid it, and don't make your own mistake because it will cost you dearly here today. Field rolls off on the entry to turn number 1. This is the fastest and highest banked corner around this facility. You enter this at well over 225 miles an hour, Tom. Then down a gear, maybe 2. At the exit of the corner, the run down to the tunnel turn number 2. That, a little bit less banked, you'll be carrying a lot of speed through there. Narrow, very, very narrow. Can't really run multiple lines. Then, turn number 3, the last of the corners on the racetrack. This is the flattest corner, maybe the slowest, but it sets you up for the longest straightaway. Multiple grooves, multiple lines, and how you take it determines how fast you are around this 2.5-mile racetrack. So lots on the line tonight. So excited to get this underway. Thanks again to the Coca-Cola Bottling Company of Kokomo, Indiana for sponsoring this season, and Catalyst 317 for being on board for the Catalyst 317-400 and the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series Triple Crown. At the front, we've got Andrew Kinsella lined up on the outside, and the 88 of Jason Brophy, his first pole of the season. He won the season opener last time around at Homestead, and he's capable of winning this race. I think he's looking forward to this. Got private label on the side here today, and we'll see if he can bring it home. 160 laps. The clock is going to start ticking in just a few moments. Pace car through turns, I was going to say 3 and 4. Turn number 3. What turn 4 here at Pocono? Time to go racing in the Catalyst 317-400. Pace car pulls off. Green flag in the hands of the starter. Green flag flies, and we're racing in round number 5 of the 2021 season. Fanning out 3 wide, Brophy did not get a very good start. Kinsella will lead the field down to the first corner here, Tom. Already 200 miles an hour. That's just on a restart. Here we come.
Brophy shuffled all the way back to 4th and still side by side with Andreas Ike, challenging for 5th. Liam Quinn is up a couple of positions as well. There's 3rd on the grid, but they're side by side for the lead. Henry Bennett goes up the inside for turn 2, picks up the spot from Kinsella.
Oh, he dove in there really hard, though. Can he hang on to it? Yes, he does. He goes to the top spot. Big slide behind him. That's Adam Dock, I believe, the 99 that had a big wiggle on corner exit. And Andreas Ike just up the road. He's finished real solid in almost every race this season. Behind him, I hear some drama, some contact. 3 wide. We've made it through lap number 1. No, car spins to the inside. That's Burton. He's going to slam the barrier on the inside lane, and his race is over before it even started.
Almost ended up in the pit lane already, so we stay green flag running. The top 2 breaking away just a little bit. Henry Bennett and Kinsella, the 2 green cars. You see they got about a 5-car length lead. I was going to point out these are some of the longest straightaways on our calendar anywhere we go, so the draft is going to be a much bigger deal here than anywhere else. Everywhere else, it's a little bit more like a push to pass, a little bit of a slingshot, 3 wide down into turn 2.
That's Cahill on the bottom. He makes the pass on Pavelski. That was amazing. Or that's Kingsbury, rather. Amazing pass there behind him. A little bit of shuffling. That's Kingsbury in the 21. Defending from Maleska and Matt Holaba just behind them. But big moves here early in the going here, Tom. Lots of slicing and dicing.
And that's all that space we talked about. I was going to point out also, Rick Kingsbury is your defending race winner from when we raced here 2 seasons ago. So he's down mired in the middle of the pack, but maybe he knows something about racing at Pocono that the rest don't know. Still side by side, now finally single file into 1.
Kingsbury and Cahill, they're side by side through the first of 3 corners, and Cahill is going to use that outside lane. You can actually get up there and kind of rim ride that a little bit if you know what you're doing, but if you make a mistake and miss that corner, it will cost you dearly. Here is Riley Thompson in the 56 car to the inside of, that's Maleska in the 91. Yes, it is. Up front, Bennett and Kinsella breaking away here, but it still only is 3/10 between them.
This looks a lot like Homestead, where Bennett was really, really powerful at the beginning of the race. I think he led the entire first fuel stint before finally falling off pace just a little bit. And Demerit ended up running with that strategy that put him out way in front on the last cycle of pit stops. But Bennett looked really strong tonight. Kinsella's keeping up, and they're kind of pulling away from the field.
How about 220 by the camera in turn number 1? Car out of line in the background. That's the number 7 of Austin Espedy. He's dropped in behind Andreas Ike, who started in 5th. Espedy has gained 1 spot from where he started this race. Behind him, a little bit of shuffling. There's David Adams in the 00, and up the road, that was a big slide on corner exit from Christopher Demerit. He's up, actually down 3 spots from the drop of the green flag, so he's not going the right direction.
He's taking his time. Look at him running nice and high. Maybe some conservation going on in the 144. We have to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's been so picture perfect all season on the strategy. It almost seems purposeful that he would be this far back, but perhaps it's not. Maybe he just doesn't have the speed as he goes inside to protect from Ray Kingsbury, picks up 1 more spot, and now sits in the 16th. No,
big
17th.
push. Big push on corner exit. He's going to get split 3 wide with Kingsbury on the outside. He bailed out of that. That was not going to be very good if he held the throttle down. The tricky thing with the Indy cars here, Tom, is you have a hard time knowing if the car's going to push until it's far too late to lift out of it. As soon as you lift, that car's just going to push and understeer, so you got to know quick. In the background, you saw the 91 almost get in the fence. So there's not a lot of time to catch a mistake if you understeer into a corner. 24 car, Tanner Watkins, and wow, Riley Thompson took somebody all the way to the fence on the exit of turn number 3.
I think it was Ray and Matt Kingsbury got together in an awkward situation, ended up behind. They didn't touch each other, I don't think, but something awkward happened. Oh, they did touch. There was a touch between Kingsbury and Thompson. So the red of Riley Thompson, watch him down low.
Kingsbury real slow, comes over to defend just too late. I don't know if they actually did touch their time, but it was real close. Late block there, I think, from Kingsbury.
And Thompson had a killer race last week, 4th place, and jumped up 20 positions in the championship. Unfortunately, he's still only 18th, but he's got another great charge going.
I was going to say only 18th. He started 32nd. He's made a whole bunch of spots.
I meant 18th in the championship, but also 18th on the track, and he's going the right way. Another touch on the wall.
That, I think, is Evan Adams in the background, and behind him, Mike Kitchell in the 04. They had a touch coming out of turn number 3. Here's a look at this. No, it was just Adams all on his own, just caught the wall out of turn 4. He should be able to continue, just light glancing blow to the right front. Here's Pavelski on Ziegers into the tunnel turn here. It's a game of chicken off into that corner. If you don't get single filed out, it is sometimes not a good ending to the day. So ticking off laps here, working lap number 7. Here's Adam Dock on the outside of Andrew Wood in the number 64. And just in front, Chris Stouffer. No change for the lead. Henry Bennett still got it. Kinsella 4/10 back. And now you're starting to get into the clicking off laps portion here. But Chris Demerit can't afford to do that here. You can't sit 17th all day. You got to go. Watch the speed climb here as we head onto the back straightaway. 220, 225 we'll likely see. 226, then down 2 gears. See him offsetting just a little bit to keep out of the aero push of the car in front. That's Chris Cahill.
Very different shape of this race forming right now than last week. Last week we couldn't get 10 laps before we had a caution. Now we're coming up on lap 10. We haven't even had a close call other than the first lap where the first car crashed into the pit lane. But that car off track now, and everybody seems to be pretty comfortable. I'm surprised at how fast leaders of the packs are able to run. It doesn't seem like the draft is nearly as strong as we expected it to be down those longer straightaways.
And one of the reasons might be you're running a little bit trimmed out. Whoa, there's a couple drivers getting real handsy here. That's Daniel Ziegers and Matt Pavelski. You're running these cars pretty trimmed out here, so you're not going to have a lot of drag on these cars. These are about as slippery as they're going to get. So that's going to decrease the draft effect here just a little bit. So you're right. You're not going to see that incredible suck-up effect you'd get at some of the other tracks where you don't have to run so trimmed out.
Espedy with a big push coming into 3 before he dropped off the back of Wilson Nito. So Espedy in the blue, Nito in the purple. Nito just picked up about 5 car lengths with that exchange.
Daniel Ziegers just had an issue. Oh, I think we got Kingsbury slow on this front straightaway, but he's pulling off and slow. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Has he got damage or something? Let's go back and see. He was just all on his own. I did see one of the drivers, Daniel Ziegers, he pulled off the racetrack, and I want to see what happened here. He's just going to understeer in the aero wash behind, and he's going to do exactly what. Wow! Ooh. That was not a fun one. Here's another look at it. That's a costly place to lose a race car, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm surprised the car didn't break in half. If that was modeled, it would have happened here. As he touched the wall, just loses the back end. That's the first indication of how loose the cars are for me as well. That's a massive hit.
Well, that's about as close to splitting in half as you're going to get there, Tom.
Yeah.
Matt Kingsbury hitting pit lane. And you see there's a little bit of damage to that front wing, but I don't know otherwise why he'd come in. This seems early for a scheduled stop unless he's trying to hit a window. We saw him slow, like he was trying to figure out like if there was an issue with it.
He certainly didn't seem like he trusted the car at full speed down into turn 1. He wanted to lift and make sure that it was going to turn before he found out that it was just going to go into the wall, and maybe now just servicing that to save himself some pain if he felt the car was not going to turn. But unfortunately, he will likely go a lap down as you hear the field coming up behind him and screaming by, there goes the leaders.
Battles happening down the front straightaway here as a couple cars peel out of line. One of them is Chris Stouffer in that 13 car. That's the teal and silver on the inside of Tony Shallon's number 31. Ooh, that's going to be a little bit of a slide job there, dirt track style. And Christopher Demerit slowly beginning to work his way forward. I'm getting the hunch that this car is set up for a little bit of a longer run, maybe starting on some lower tire pressures here and building up throughout the course of the race.
Very possible. The other interesting thing I just noticed across the line last time through, the top 2, Henry Bennett and Andrew Kinsella, who had pulled out almost 2 seconds from the field, they were 2/10 slower each than the rest of the cars behind them. Jason Brophy, Liam Quinn, Wilson Nito were all about 2/10 quicker last time across. This time they're back to their normal pace, but it looks like the leaders maybe in pulling out that gap have burned the cars up maybe a little bit.
Here's Wilson Nito. We got Pocono Raceway popping in the chat. Hi, guys. That's pretty cool. That doesn't happen a whole lot. But Wilson Nito moving forward here, up 3 spots from the start of the race. And again, he struggled massively this season, not on pace. It was on consistency and getting to the end of the race, not really of his own doing. Buried all the way down, I think, at 28th in the standings here, Tom. So he's looking for a bit of a turnaround. Yeah,
30th, a 12th, and a 30th in the 3 races he attempted. He skipped the road course at Barber. But yes, you saw that right. 29th, tied for 29th actually in the championship. Not where he should be based on having already been pole twice and certainly a very fast car.
Good battle for position going on between Philip Kraus and Andreas Ike. You see Ike out of line in turn number 1. Here comes Kraus up the inside now. Drag race down the backstretch. How about that at 220 miles an hour? Remember, our consequences for mistakes. We've only seen a couple drivers make very tiny mistakes, and it costs them their car and their race.
Kraus, your defending champion from last year, and he sits 6th in that championship, but he's definitely had a little bit of an up and down season. 6th, 32nd, 4th, and 12th. So really all over the board, but even with that kind of mixed consistency, that's pretty good enough for 6th in the championship. And now under attack from Christopher Demerit, who's charging forward again.
Cars out of line here, passing for position. This is Stouffer. under attack from Shawan, and you mentioned Demerit up to 14th and climbing. Now remember how slow of a start he had. Started this race back in 15th. He actually dropped to 19th and now is charging his way back forward and is now making positive progress and a net gain at this point. Halfway through the run already though, so you have to wonder, is this going to continue? Is he going to start off at a slower pace and then gradually work up to it? Or will he be able to fire off a lot quicker in the subsequent runs in this race?
I think only time will tell, but one thing we do know is that he's just been on top of the game mentally for reading the race and figuring out the strategy to run. And he's won, whether he's the fastest car or not, on that merit more than anything else. This race, if it's going to go very, very green, which so far, we'll knock on wood here, this is going to be a very green race, and there's less to work with when you have a lot of green flag running. You just need to be fast, and if that car is not fast and needs some strategy, the less cautions, the less strategy involved.
There's Andreas Eichen and Philip Kraus right behind him, following through the tunnel turn. And then off into turn number 3. Kraus started this race as the caution flies. It's Charles Ante's 86 that has had trouble. Oh, that's a big crash over at the exit of, I think this is at the exit of turn 1, I believe. Yes, that's a huge crash. That car missing a whole bunch of body work. Let's go back and see if we can find where this happened. Ante just loses control and, oh, just catches the end of that wall right there, Tom. And it's a real slow, weird-looking spin. Right on board here.
We saw a lot of these self-spins last week coming off of turn 2 down at Texas, and we hadn't seen a lot of indication early in this race that the cars were particularly loose. That's the first time we've really seen the back end get away from somebody. Now that we've hit lap 17, perhaps the tire wear, we suspect maybe 25 to 35 at most laps on a fuel run. Maybe the cars get a bit of a handful at this stage in the race.
Yeah, that is a huge, huge hit. Watch this again as he comes off of turn number 1 and just catches the end of that wall, noses in, and breaks off the nose cone and a whole bunch of other parts and pieces. So Charles Ante out early, missing a whole bunch of that car that is useful and necessary for going fast around the tricky triangle. So Henry Bennett leads the way. Our first caution, our first reset here. Come on down. I'm sure everyone will take tires and fuel. Still a long way to go in this race. We've barely made a dent. But what we've seen is that Bennett and Kinsella fired off real quick, but Jason Brophy did not restart very well or did not take the initial start very well. He was the pole sitter, and he has not led a single lap this race.
His pace is otherwise okay for best lap. He's right in the mix with everybody else. In fact, the slowest car in the top 5 is Liam Quinn. And he had been tagging along with them, but everybody's going to hit pit lane in the top grouping, trying to spread out a little bit. Look at Bennett accelerate a little bit, trying to buy himself an extra couple hundredths of seconds in pit lane. I don't see anybody not opting for a pit stop just yet. The other thing making me nervous, if you're watching, obviously you're joining us, Andrew Kinsella, you're seeing him blink. That's internet connection problems, and I really hope it doesn't get any worse than that, because it's kind of a nightmare for everybody else to be around you if you're blinking like that, but also he could disappear at any moment and not come back.
He certainly could, and looks like Christopher, did he even stop in the box? He didn't. He just rolled straight on through. He might have missed his box there, Tom, and everyone else out and in pretty quickly. Looks like Bennett will lead Kinsella off. No other major shifts that I can see. But Stouffer didn't take service, and I don't think that was intentional. So he is sitting down, sitting up in the lead, but I think he'll have to come on back.
And is that Matt Kingsbury that also stayed out? He was a lap down.
He's 4 laps down, actually. Probably diagnosing, I would guess, a hardware issue of some sort. I didn't see a whole lot of visual damage on this car other than the right front wing assembly, but if that was that badly damaged, it would have fallen off. And I didn't see any suspension damage, so my bet is on a hardware-related issue for Matt Kingsbury. But he is 4 laps down, and without a handful of cautions and a lot of luck, I don't think he's going to be on the lead lap by the end of this thing. But we've still got 142 laps to go, so let's not count him out this early. You're watching the Catalyst 317-400 from Pocono Raceway in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. 18 laps complete of 160. 1 caution so far, that for the 86 of Charles Ante with a crash at the exit at turn number 1. The entire field came down to pit lane with the exception of Chris Stouffer, who seemed like he missed his box. And we'll see this time if he makes a trip down on pit lane. Again, my name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman for the 5th round of the 2021 season. And now Chris Stouffer will come on down. So Lesson learned there. If that was a mistake, he'll know not to do that again. It's hard, though. Pit lane's a busy place with this many cars in the lead lap. Everyone's pitting together. It's really easy to miss your box, even though they're pretty sizable here.
I thought I remember that car running in the top 15, if not the top 10, when they pit the first time around. So that's going to be a very painful mistake. He'll drop all the way to essentially 28th or 29th on the field. Lost a lot of track positions with that mistake if it was a mistake.
1 to green, lights are off atop the pace car. And from what we're hearing, Daniel Ziegers is out of the car. And those water barrels nicely placed at the entry to pit lane there, Tom. I think in real life, I know that this track got rescanned and sort of put on the shelf for a little while at iRacing. I think the pit wall's actually been extended farther towards the turn 3 side to avoid that exact scenario. They had a couple cars in NASCAR qualifying a couple years back when they just repaved this track. They had a couple cars loop it and crash into the pit wall on the inside of pit road and knock people's helmets and tires and all sorts of stuff into the garage area. So they learned pretty quick that they needed to extend that wall, and that has been done. I don't think that's been reflected here in iRacing, as we saw there with the crash at the exit of turn 3. All right, restart time. You want to pick driver's right. You want to stay up there, all single file here, but we get a lot of that accordion effect, Tom, and we saw the 88 of Jason Brophy not get a very good start. So if I'm Wilson Nito, Liam Quinn, Austin Espedy, I'm leaving a little bit more space to make sure I don't run into him and create that stack up.
It's definitely one of the longest runs down into turn 1 that we'll have, so I think even more so than normal, where you might have a couple of seconds before you're finally down into turn 1. These guys have much more like 5 to 7 seconds before they turn in for turn 1. That's a long time at 200 miles an hour, a lot of space to cover. So yeah, getting a good jump on this restart is very, very critical, and more so just getting rolling with the field, because if you have a bad restart or a bad start in general, we saw Jason Brophy, he just got freight trained.
Time to go racing again. Lap number 20, this time from Pocono. Green flag back in the air. Henry Bennett fires off. Ooh. Pulls down to the inside lane. Already a lot of shuffling in the backdrop. That's Andreas Eich, Philip Kraus going side by side behind them. That's the 31 of Tony Schowen. And Christopher Demerit popped out of line. He's under attack from, I believe that's 75 of Pavelski on the outside. And whoa, that's tight at the exit of turn 2. Turn 1 rather. We've made it so far.
Jason Brophy attacking for second place. He goes around the high side on the exit of turn 2. On the high side of Kinsella. Kinsella takes it back on the preferred driving line down through the apex, but a lot of shuffling down here in the bottom of the top 15.
For second place, rather, here comes Brophy around the outside of Kinsella, going to try to roll that momentum, and look at Henry Bennett diving out of the way of the draft, pulling the 14 car with him. Lots of shuffling as we head down the front straightaway, hitting lap number 21. Look at them popping out like meerkats or something in the wilderness as they head down the front straight. This is their natural habitat here at Pocono.
That was interesting. I'm curious if Bennett was trying to give Kinsella the draft or he was just trying to stay out of Brophy's draft. But either way, Brophy picks up the spot. Now Kinsella with a slingshot up the inside, down into turn 2, the game of chicken you mentioned. And he takes it, but they're so close. And now Austin Espedy in the blue car comes up out of nowhere past Wilson Nito and challenges for third.
He'll take that position away from Brophy and trying to get the nose down the inside underneath Kinsella at the exit of turn number 3. Nito watching from behind, licking his lips. He sees these guys scrapping for a spot. He'll take 1 or 2. Oh, door slam. Had to lift off the throttle. And Tony Schowen watching from behind, waiting for these guys to make a mess.
That was a huge lane change, but Andrew Kinsella gets back to the second spot. They're still side by side for third, almost 3 wide at the apex of 1. Brophy goes back around the high side. Interesting to see the high side working so well for him on the exit of turn 1.
Nito, door to door, I should say side pod to side pod with Austin Espedy here. Not going to clear him, has to do that big lift, and that's going to leave the opportunity open for Schowen. Here comes Kraus with a huge run. Andreas Eich in the background to the far right of that shot. Lots of scrapping back and forth here between turns 2 and 3. Now Nito going to lose some momentum. Here comes Kraus, but nowhere to go. Look at everyone shuffling. I told you 6 wide, 5 deep. They're already trying 4. Nito gets through to 4th.
This is so intense. Finally, Brophy and Kinsella get a little bit of a breather, but the battle is for 4th. Schowen goes through on Nito. Nito all the way up to the wall. Did he make a mistake or did he have contact even? The purple car dropping like a rock. Schowen in the white with red accents goes to 4th. Philip Kraus follows him through to 5th. Wilson Nito salvages a 6th place right now. It still can't get away from Austin Espedy.
Man. That was so dicey. The 44 squeezed to the outside of Adam Dock and somehow made it through. I'd have to say, Tom, that if you have a contact going into turn one, you're not going to come out the other side. So if Nito got hit, that was a pretty amazing job to hang on to it. I think he probably just got in there and didn't turn in quick enough to get down to the bottom of the racetrack. But look at all this shuffling happening at the front here. Here comes Andrew Wood in the 64. Haven't talked a whole lot about him today. Started 18th plus 10 into 8th.
Nito is up against the wall again. I thought it looked like he had made a mistake and was inches from the wall, but he's running that high side on purpose. He's going for the slingshot down the straightaway between 1 and 2, picks up almost the point, yes, across the nose of Wood, and now tucks in behind Austin Espedy in the blue.
Yeah, that outside lane will pay off in turn one for sure. Look at this stack up behind them as they come out of the tunnel turn. Pavelski leading this group. It's Holliba in the green. There's Tanner Watkins, Brian Carey, and more. 3 wide, car in the middle. Oh, car in the fence hard. Austin Espedy clobbered the turn 3 wall at corner exit. That's going to hurt a lot, I think.
Doesn't seem to have lost too much momentum. Andreas Eich is not running him down massively in the white and red. He turns into one, makes the corner, so the car might be mechanically sound, but you're right, there was a massive puff of smoke off the wall. He definitely made contact.
As long as you hit it square, you're generally okay. You just don't want to hit it at an angle where you're bending suspension, but if you get the side pod and the floor to hit it, you might be able to walk away okay. Here is the 24, Tanner Watkins on Riley Thompson. That's for 16th spot. Matt Holliba defending. Remember where he started? Told you he'd come forward up to 15th, his climb continuing.
Yeah, this 0-2 is always really strong in the race. Runs a little bit high in turn 3. And it looked like Thompson was going to get the run up the inside, but no, now slots in behind, and that was a great run off of 3 for Holliba. Goes inside of Pavelski. Can't quite get it done.
Here's Andrew Wood on Liam Quinn into turn 1 for 9th. Makes that pass done. Pulls down in front of Adam Dock. Shoves the nose up the racetrack just a little bit there, and at the exit of turn 2, big crossover by Holliba. 3 wide down the backstretch, but he loses all that momentum. Thompson and Pavelski will take it to the tunnel turn 2 wide. Now they single file out. Pavelski 14th, Thompson 15th, and Christopher Demerit slowly but surely creeping his way forward as the points leader. This is a great round to solidify your lead with a 1.5 points multiplication here today.
Well, he's leading the championship by 24 points, so even if he doesn't finish in the top 10 or top 5, he's still in a pretty good spot. He just needs to finish this one and stay out of trouble because there's been so much action back there where he is. He's really in kind of the danger zone as far as I'm concerned. Holliba leading this massive group of everybody outside of the top 15. Thompson, Carey, Belechka. Interesting, Carey had qualified so well and seems to have really dropped much further back.
Yeah, started 4th and just not going the right direction here. It seems to get finishes that you wouldn't expect, so maybe he'll have a better ending of the day than the start. And look at this train starting behind Andreas Eich. This is for 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Andrew Wood at the back of this shot. Nito continuing to try to rim ride this racetrack. Not a strategy I would have expected to see this early in the race. That line will develop as the day goes on. But Nito already pushing the boundaries of what is an acceptable groove here early. That track will rubber in and it'll heat up. You might want to experiment just going a little bit higher. But now he's going to try to low side into turn 1 on Austin Espedy.
I think these two are lassoed together. They just can't get away from each other, whether they were battling for 2nd or battling for 7th. But Nito still has the position over Espedy. And Eich has picked up a number of positions from that whole exchange and is starting to pull away, honestly, just a little bit.
Up front, Henry Bennett leads by a full second. Here is Christopher Demerit, Pavelski and Cahill behind him. Drop a little bit deeper in the field. Here's Josh Klog and Mike Kitchell. Is there a car that just looped in at the exit of the corner? I thought I just saw a car go sailing down the racetrack. Don't think I saw correctly, though. Look at this, down the front straightaway, everyone fanning out. I love how this racetrack's 5 lanes wide, and they only use 2 most of the time, but you'll use all 5 on a restart.
Big incident in the background. Evan Adams into the pit lane. We've seen it 3 times now tonight, and that's massive damage. Another car totaled, toast on the pit lane.
Wow, that car is absolutely junk. Trying to make it to the pit box. I don't think it's going to have a lot left. Oh my gosh, what a hit. I mean, that is just unbelievable energy that is all expelled here with the safer barrier. Just catches the wall on the outside here, Tom, comes back across the racetrack, and then watch this, slams that safer barrier, sends parts sailing into the infield area, but will grind to a halt on what's left of the suspension, and that car is done for the day. Demerit off into turn 1, following very closely behind Adam Dock. You see the understeer he's dealing with, and Dock is going to pull away. Up front, Bennett is driving away. And this is interesting because we saw Henry Bennett battling up front a lot last week, and we hadn't seen him really be much of a factor this season. In the past, he and his teammate Adam Blocker were consistently the best two in the field. We haven't seen it out of Bennett early in the season, but already showing his prowess at Pocono early in the day and pulling a lead on Kinsella. But Kinsella did knock a 10th out of that last time by, so keep an eye on this 14. Brophy running the high lane now through turns 1 and 2. Pavelski going by Demerit, that's for 12th. A little bit of shuffling still going on behind him, 15th or 16th. The speeds of IndyCar, 220 miles an hour. Off into turn number 1. That's what it looks like. Ooh, that was past the position, or at least an attempt at it. Nito and Andreas Ike. Whoa, Ike tried to slot in behind, but had a bigger run than I think he thought he was going to get. Almost ran into the back of Nito.
Finally doesn't work. Slotting in for 7th behind Nito. Schauen is driven away from these two in the white car up front, but look at the speed that he's able to carry. Nito is able to carry through the apex of turn 2 with no aero wash. Andreas Ike loses 2 car lengths or more. At the front, we had mentioned Henry Bennett was starting to pull away just a little bit, but Andrew Kinsella has really responded the last couple of laps and has pulled that gap within a second, now down to 8/10. So Bennett, with a little bit of a gift of that big battle for second place that unfolded for 5 to 7 laps, is now gone, and Kinsella seems to be really quick.
We're deep enough into this race now that I think we know the raw pace of all the competitors out here now that we've kind of fanned out the top 10. I think Kinsella is the fastest car here. Just by looking, he hasn't led the most laps today, but he's able to run down Bennett without a draft, and I think that tells me that Kinsella's a little quicker. Bennett got a great restart, but that 14 car, I think, is my pick to win this race.
Check out the other car on the move. Philip Kraus up to 4th, I think from maybe 8th or 9th on the grid even.
11th.
11th, that's a massive charge, and he's really hounding Brophy. Dropped off a little bit last time through, but he's the only car that I can find in the top, one of the only cars in the top 10 that has run a 41-second lap time. Everybody else lapping mostly at the 42.2 to 3 the range. Philip Kraus has turned in at least one barn burner of a lap and is way further up from where he qualified.
So he is climbing forward, and you'd expect this, being the reigning champion of the series, you would expect that he would be one of the drivers to compete here today up at the front. Following in Jason Brophy through turn 2. And Brophy, a little bit unexpected perhaps, to go out there and win the pole and then not be the fastest on outright speed. You'd think qualifying, that's all by yourself. That's where you really show your setup. But again, these guys will run slightly different setups for qualifying trim versus race trim. And whatever he did was so trimmed out, I don't think it would be drivable in a race configuration, but he doesn't quite have the speed that he did in qualifying earlier.
Very possible. And I'm also watching, Philip Kraus seems to be really strong in 1, and then Brophy pulls back out in 2 and 3. Every time they come through turn 1, Kraus is glued to the back of Brophy, and then it pulls
crash!
back out.
Turn 1 exit, Liam Quinn. Are we going to make it out of this one without a mess? No, we will not.
Oh, no, it's Demerit. Demerit tagged him.
Oh, no. Caution, lap 35. And the car that was at the front and center of all that was the 44 car. And trying to find him on the timing and scoring to pull him up. There he is now in pit lane. And the points leader crashed on lap 35 of a 160-lap race. Quinn got turned on the corner exit on the bottom. It's the 79 car, tags him, sends him around.
He actually got straightened out and was fine, but he changed lanes. Demerit was going for the gap, and more cars collected at the bottom of the track, but things were fine for a moment. It's just the closing speeds from behind were too much. Watch this unfold from Demerit's cockpit. He's going to go for the wall. He sees the gap, and then it closes.
Yeah, that's so frustrating because you feel like that was wide open there, and he was so frustrated he didn't even grind to a halt before it was all over. Here's the onboard from Riley Thompson, who got collected in this. Does he get run over from behind? Oh, no, I think he might have just, there might have been a touch with Stouffer, maybe.
I know, I think there's a bump on the bottom of the track there.
There definitely is a bump. I think that might have been it as well. Here's another look. Was there a touch from behind? No, just hit the bump. Just skated over the top of it, Tom. And that ends his race. We started this race with 33 drivers. We're down to 25. whittling them down. And this goes back to one of our keys to the race, consequences, not only for just your mistakes, but for everybody else's. And for Demerit, try to shoot a gap, and it closed. And that's it for Demerit, and this is going to be detrimental to his points situation. He came in leading by 24 points. You could say goodbye to every bit of that if Andreas Ike and Kinsella have a decent race today.
And they both are, especially Kinsella. Again, he's third in the championship. He's 44 points back from Demerit, so that's going to evaporate very, very quickly. And he's got a bunch of spots even on Ike, who sits in 7th. The field, again, all drivers seeming to be hitting the pit lane with Bennett at the point.
So down on the pit road for the second time here today. Lap number 38. In just a moment, we'll probably restart around lap 39, lap 40. And everyone in and likely going to drive back out. Dan Ench stays out to lead a lap. Will likely hit pit road the next time by. Andrew Kinsella looks like he'll be the first driver off the pit lane. Beats Bennett. That's an interesting, notable change. Everyone else will come out double wide. All right, well, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back for the restart here at lap number 39. Stay with us.
It's a love that starts early and runs deep. The road is never smooth.
Dominated this race. On the 189th lap, suddenly the car slows and Michael appears to be done.
The climb is steep.
What are we doing?
And the risk unspeakable.
So I'm pretty disappointed with the way the day went in the end.
But this journey is not traveled alone. The camera focuses on few. But the dynasty is built by many.
Time to go to work. I was on the best race course I ever driven. Congrats, guys. Really well done.
Every moment
Can you just put it into words as an owner what this win means to the Andretti family?
It's just incredible. It's such a great feeling. It's right now it feels as good as I think if I would have won it myself.
every move.
This will be fun to watch. Marco Andretti taking slick tires. I like the gamble.
Alexander Rossi to the high side. Still there. You're off clear, And Alexander Rossi has taken the lead of the Indianapolis 500.
Every triumph.
Ryan Hunter-Reay is going to win the championship.
My dream has come true. This is unbelievable.
Every milestone.
Colton Herta is going to go to victory lane.
Shared.
Coming back to the restart here for the Catalyst 317-400 from Pocono Raceway in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman. 2 cautions so far, both for crashes at the exit of turn number 2. Most recent involving points leader Christopher Demerit, Riley Thompson, and the 44 of Liam Quinn. The earlier caution involving Charles Ante in the number 86. Started the night with 33 cars, down to 25 here, Tom. The attrition is starting to kick in for the drivers that remain. There's still 120 laps to go. That's a long way. You were surprised they were jockeying so hard this early.
Yeah, there's got to be a tipping point at some point, whether it's the number of cars off the track or the number of laps completed, that the drivers have to calm down for a little bit, let the race breathe, because really, as far as I'm concerned, you're just putting yourself in position to be able to win the race after the final pit stop, and we've got a lot of pit stops to go before that.
Certainly do. Andrew Kinsella leading the race for the first time tonight. He's been, I think, one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. We'll see if he can hold it up. Green flag back in the air. Oh, stack up. That's going to be a big mess there as everyone shunts each other out of the way, and I think we're going to escape it, but we're 4 wide on the front stretch here, Tom.
We're not quite out of this one yet. Brophy really jumped the start, almost went to the back of Bennett, and really caused a massive stack up behind him. Surprised Philip Kraus didn't get the tail, but he maintains 4th place side by side for Schowen and Carey for 5th and 6th, and the rest of the field really fanned out. It's another car that can't get out of the action. Wilson Nito there in the hot purple.
Hot purple, that's a cool color.
Yeah.
I like that. As he went off into turn 1, he had a big understeer moment. Almost didn't make it into turn 1 with all that stack up. He will drop all the way down to 12th on the restart here. Up in front, here comes Bennett on the outside. He might have a little bit more control, a bit more downforce built into this car. Judging by his ability to make passes and move around the racetrack. But as you see here, Kinsella pulling away, maybe a bit more trimmed out. Behind him, it's a mess. Here's Jason Brophy, Brian Carey, Andrew Wood, Tony Schowen making an appearance a little closer to the front this time.
I just realized why Brian Carey was not towards the front earlier. He qualified 4th but had an EOL. I saw him pull to the side, and he started at the very back of this field. So for him to move back up into 4th, he just slots in front of Brophy, who's in the neon yellow there. That number 79 came from essentially last, and he now is running 4th. That's a fast race car.
Yeah, that's for sure. Look at this, 3 wide through the tunnel turn there for a moment. There's Chris Stouffer right in front of Ray Kingsbury moving his way forward in the 25. Tony Schowen, Wilson Nito. Nito on a recovery charge after a poor restart. Look at the run. That, I think it was that Valeska that got an amazing launch out of turn number 3. No, that was actually Schowen, I believe, in the 31 that took that launch.
It almost looked like Nito had something go wrong. If I'm not mistaken, he looked slow in a straight line. I can't imagine why that would have happened other than maybe some aero damage we can't see, but the number 20 car doesn't appear to be very healthy in a straight line as he just got passed by 5 cars down the front straightaway. I think at least 4 of them went by him easily, and he's continuing to fall.
I don't see any damage on that car, but it's not, doesn't mean that there isn't any. Could have picked it up on that restart in that shuffle. Could be right on the nose as well. Doesn't take a lot to get these cars off pace with a little bit of damage.
Ray Kingsbury has all of a sudden come alive in the black and yellow down there at the bottom. He's your defending race winner from 2 seasons ago, the last time we raced at Pocono, and now is racing for the top 10 side by side across the line with Robert Malechka, but had been up in the top 10 and is now slipped back a couple of positions.
Into turn 1 at 217 miles an hour. On the inside of Holaba in the 02. Andreas Eich in the 76. Are we surprised that there's not a bit more pace out of Andreas so far today?
He had been running up in about 7th and is now down to 14th. A couple of drivers have really turned up the wick on that final restart, but he was one of the drivers that did get balked pretty badly on the restart. Something just happened to Bennett. I don't know if something slowed him down or if Philip Kraus just took the position away, but Philip Kraus is 2nd place over Bennett.
I think Kraus just went up there and passed him for the position. He just went up there and took it. It was 2/10 quicker than the leader last time by as well. So maybe Philip Kraus, defending champion of the series, can go up here and steal this lead away from Kinsella. Let's come up off of turn 2. Look at the leader is just able to drive away, but then they start to fall back into the clutches of those behind him. I think it's a little bit of that aero wash, a good restart launch, but then they accordion back together 10 to 15 laps into the run. We'll see if Kinsella can hold it. 7/10 of a second of a lead. Here's Kingsbury on Malechka. This is for 11th. Thinks better of it. Tucks back in line.
Look who's coming with him. Matt Holaba up to 13th from, I think we saw 23rd or so on the grid, 22nd. Yeah, there you go. Up 10 spots for the 02. Kind of following Ray Kingsbury through the field at this point, and they're both ahead of Andreas Eich, who's slotted in behind them.
Flynn Lazier hits pit lane for unknown reasons, but no damage to that car that I can see. There's Brian Carey on the back of Andrew Wood.
This is the battle for 3rd. Bennett is jukes to the inside to maybe try to feign them off, but they go anyway. Andrew Wood up the inside, shoves it in, and will take the spot, but Carey backs out of it.
Yeah, he lifted, and every time you lift here, that momentum that you build up pushing through all of this air, you build up so much momentum. As soon as you lift, you have to struggle. The acceleration to get back up to top speed takes you a second, and that's going to leave him vulnerable to someone like Jason Brophy. Here he comes. He's going to go defensive and make Brophy go to the outside. Clouds coming over the speedway. Track temperature stabilized at about 111 degrees. We'll see if it drops or rises from here. As we get later in the day, it might actually start to drop with the cloud cover and the sun beginning to get a little bit lower in the sky. But for now, it's hovering about where we started.
Bennett feeling a little bit protective of that 3rd position as he tried to, he actually lost the spot to Andrew Wood last time through turn 1, and now was protecting from Brian Carey. Jason Brophy's with him now, and also Tanner Watkins, Matt Pavelski. This is kind of a 5-car duel for 4th, but Bennett has slipped from leading before the pit stops to now back to 4th.
Yeah, keeping an eye on Tanner Watkins in the 24 because he started this race in 16th, was quietly hanging around inside the top 15. We didn't really talk about him and this very unassuming black car. But now, cracked the top 10 and moving forward, and a little bit brisker than the drivers in front. Was 2/10 quicker last time by than the drivers in front of him. So I think he's coming, and look at this stack up now with Brophy and Carey off into the tunnel turn.
Watkins is one of about half dozen cars that really turned up the wick after this most recent restart, I should say, and there's a handful of cars that I'm majorly surprised are outside of the top 10.
This is for the race lead. Kraus and Kinsella at the exit of turn 3. Here comes the 19. He ran Kinsella back from a long way, 7/10 across the line. Kinsella leads, but Kraus is there. Into turn 1, can he pull this off? Going to brave the inside lane. Kinsella's going to try to carry that momentum, but he cannot do it. Philip Kraus to the race lead. Kinsella with another run. Is he going to go back? Yes, he will. This is a little bit racy for my liking on lap 47 here, Tom. Really easy to make a mistake and end your day.
Yeah, especially on the way into turn 2. Kinsella turned in pretty confidently and put Kraus at the bottom of the track. Didn't really give him much of an out from the perspective we could see anyway, but Kraus is also going to see that blinking. Maybe be a little bit nervous to run super close quarters with Kinsella because internet connections, you got to be a little bit more liberal with how much space you leave people, or conservative, I should say.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we talk about net code being a problem. It's the prediction code that we have here in iRacing to make sure that we can race in real time. Now that prediction code, it gets less and less accurate the faster you go because it's got to predict farther and farther ahead. I don't like Kinsella's position because Kraus is underneath him, and if they touch, it's game over for both of them, I think, as they come out at turn 2 down the straightaway here. There's Andrew Wood watching from behind. He's willing to just follow him through and see who sorts it out, but they're still door to door.
Watching from behind, but coming up quickly as Kraus finally closes the door on the position, takes over the lead, and they run single file for the first time since that challenge started. Andrew Wood is now within striking distance, but is going to watch the blinking of Kinsella and have the same nerves that Kraus did.
Single file elsewhere behind him. There's a pop out of line for the 25 at Kingsbury. That's on Tony Schowen for 10th. Schowen had a big wiggle there and drove up the racetrack. There's Nito, who has not driven back forward after his restart balk. Working over Hollibuth for 13th. The other concern for Kinsella is if that internet connection continues to be that unstable, he will likely be asked to pull off the racetrack. So that would be a disastrous situation.
That would be massive. That would be 2 championship contenders out of this race, and then all of a sudden Andreas Eich is looking really good because Adam Blocker's not even here. He's also in the top 5 in the championship. So it would pretty much just leave Andreas Eich and Ray Kingsbury as contenders as far as that top 5 in the overall standings go. Tanner Watkins picks up 5th from Brian Carey. I'm curious, Jason Brophy dropped all the way back to 9th. The 88 car is really falling back a lot.
Yeah, he's struggling right now. He might have shot out of the cannon a little bit too much on that latest restart and heated up the tires or maybe picked up some damage somewhere, but he definitely does not have the pace that he had at the beginning of the run.
The other question I have, is there any reason now that he's maybe sensed that this is the stage of the race where things might settle in? Is there a reason to conserve right now?
Yes.
I'm trying to think. Maybe there is, but it's a bold move if you especially have the opportunity to be the fastest car on the track. Choosing not to be is hard.
I think that at this stage in the race, we're still early enough that you can almost expect for certain another caution flag today. And I think it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in 15th on the last restart. As long as you got 15 or 20 laps left in the race, you can go from 15th to 1st. I don't think it really matters where you are, but except for that last 15 laps and if you can get a restart or not. You're chancing that you're going to get another yellow if you decide to hang out, but I don't know if that's what Brophy's doing, but I think that's an okay thing to do.
What I just watched right there, he let Ray Kingsbury go through, and instead of trying to take any sort of attack back at him, just let it happen. And I suspect we might see that happen a couple more times as Schowen and Malechka might try the same thing. Now, finally, Brophy goes for the position, so maybe not. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he might be thinking that way, but he is currently really racing Ray Kingsbury.
Kingsbury on the outside, Brophy on the inside, and Tony Schowen watching from behind. Not going to take them 3 wide. No need and no rush, really.
It's incredible to me the amount of draft the car from behind gets when there are 2 cars side by side in front. That run that Schowen had, yeah, there's nowhere to go with it, but the amount of speed you get, considering you basically get nothing from a single car draft, if there are 2 cars side by side in front, you really get a massive pull.
The other thing to consider is that when you have another car alongside, the lead car, if you're running kind of side by side, Tom, you're actually dumping air onto the aero components of the driver next to you. So they call that side draft, essentially, where you're running side by side. Your nose is pushing air up onto the car next to you. It's slowing both of you down. It doesn't speed anybody up. It might look that way, but you're really just slowing each other down. So it's kind of doubling the effect of the draft if you're following, as the front two cars are slowing themselves down by 5 miles an hour, and the trailing car is speeding up by 5 to 10 miles an hour. It can be 15 to 20 speed difference between those two cars.
Brophy has now been passed by both Tony Schowen, and I suspect Wilson Nito will be next very quickly, as he's now even running the high line, maybe even saving tires and fuel there in the 88. Nito got a massive push, almost went up in the wall, and that allows Andreas Eick through for 12th. Some of these names, I can't believe we're saying they're battling for 12th and 13th, but just not having a hot night right now, or at least at this phase of the race.
Yeah, Nito is running those upper grooves, and that's fine and dandy, but when you're running up that close to the wall, you don't have a lot of air room. I mean, you're going to have 5 feet to catch it. And you heard the understeer, you heard him have to slam on the brakes and try to keep that car turned off the fence. So that's the risk you run when you run up that high against the racetrack wall. Pretty deep into another green flag run here. You have to start to think, does Philip Kraus want to be pacing this? I like where Kinsella has been today, running in second. That seems to be the safest place to be of any place on the racetrack, out of the fray, but in the draft still.
And he's also getting the benefit of a little bit of fuel saving potentially, just working the car a little bit less. Now an attack for third. Bennett finally challenges Wood back for third and takes the low line through one. But the high line is really working well for a lot of drivers tonight. Wood maintains the point, gets the slingshot back around. Bennett slots back in line.
Pavelski out of line in the background, following Brian Carey. But now single file, and you mentioned getting in line, logging laps. Getting into that stage now as we approach the halfway point here shortly. This is when you're just starting to find your groove, figure out what your car needs on its own. The misleading part is that you might be in a pack at the end of this race. So if you decide now that, hey, I could use a little bit less aero and tweak a wing or tweak the weight jacker or something of the sort. If you make an adjustment now, it's going to affect the car differently if you're in a pack. So you have to be conscious of how your car is going to react in different aerodynamic scenarios before you make those changes. Stouffer, big swing off the fence at the exit of turn one. He'll pull even with Pavelski down the back straight here.
It's good salvage. This is the driver that missed his pit box, we suspect, on the first round of pit stops. Had to come back through, lost all his track position gained, and has made that up again and then some. Really good charge for the 13 as he's battling for Pavelski in 7th position.
Up front, Philip Kraus leads this race, but Andrew Kinsella is beginning to run him down at 0.6 of a second. It's a story we've seen a lot today. The leader gets out in front, leads a handful of laps, and then the second place car begins to run him back down. However, the difference this time is that Philip Kraus already did that earlier in this run. So we're starting to see this kind of back and forth effect of running the leader down, getting the lead, and then getting run back down again. Brophy dropping to 11th on Tony Schowen. David Adams behind Matt Holleba. This is for 16th. And Tanner Watkins quietly has crept inside the top 5. Talked about him a little while ago. But not a driver that we're familiar with seeing up towards the front. But running 19th in the point standings and plus 16 after Texas. And runs 5th right now with a chance to gain a whole lot more.
Yeah, 6th at Texas really boosted his championship efforts. He picked up 16 spots that round alone after having what was likely not a great start to the season. Yeah, 31st, 17th, missed Barber, and then finally that 6th back at Texas. But he is on team talent with a number of the other drivers that we're seeing have good runs tonight at various stages. So maybe a shared setup. He's on the same team with Jason Brophy. He's on the same team with Andreas Eick, Austin Espedy, who was running towards the front, Liam Quinn before he had issues. So probably a good wealth of information available to him.
Information is success in this series. The more you know, the more you can apply it. Austin Espedy has spun out, I think, on pit lane. I don't know if he was already coming here or not. He was.
Oh, he did. Yeah, look at that.
But then he looped it. Don't think he hit anything, but that's going to cost him a lot of time.
Strange to see the front tire lock, but the rear still also come around. That car must have a lot of funkiness going on with the chassis setup to change ends on it like that. But green flag pit stops maybe starting to happen here as we've been long enough, green flag long enough. Speaking of teammates, all these cars have the same team speed, and Andrew Wood's no exception. He comes to pit lane in the 64. And trying to look how many laps have we been running.
23 to be exact.
It's fewer than we'd expect, but maybe we're getting to the point where they're going to need some green flag fill-ups.
I think we're going to see maybe 23 to 30 potentially be a little bit of an adjustment here for that pit window. And it so massively depends on how much you've been drafting. These cars are wildly different in terms of their fuel mileage depending on where in the pack you're running.
And that's why I still question the 88 of Brophy. Just seems so content to be camping right here in about the 10th to 13th place. Maybe ride on board and see if he's lifting or just kind of cruising at all, but it's hard to tell with how short the gear ratios are in these cars, but a fair bit of coasting there into one.
Well, he's still downshifting to 4th through turn 1. That tells me that he's not really saving a whole lot of fuel of any kind, because you wouldn't downshift to 4th if you were trying to do that. Chris Cahoe is on pit lane in the 57 car. Haven't talked about him a lot today. But when will the leaders make the run down to pit road? I think Kraus and Kinsella would like to stay out as long as they can. Drop off in pace here is not significant, but here they come. 1 and 2 coming on down. Henry Bennett will stay out to lead a lap.
Ooh, massive lockup for Kraus coming on the way into the pit lane. We have seen some penalties handed out this season for speeding on the pit lane, so hopefully that car was slowed but enough.
So far, no one's been caught for speeding yet today, except for Austin Espedy, I think, because he spent 53 seconds in pit lane. He's 2 laps down now. Pit stops underway. A couple drivers getting shuffled back out onto the racetrack. There is one of the Kingsburys. That's Matt Kingsbury rejoining the racetrack. Kinsella comes out of line behind Philip Kraus. They maintain about the gap that they had going in. Here's Chris Stouffer. Here's Tanner Watkins, rather, pulling off to pit lane, following race leader Henry Bennett. And behind them, I think that's Tony Schowen making a stop as well.
So we thought 25 to 30. Sounds like it's more like 23 to 27 even on these pit stops. Here's your leader, Chris Stouffer. Brian Carey behind in the white with blue. Stouffer trying to get a little bit of a draft off of one of the lapped cars as he goes by up the high side down towards turn 2.
I think it's Joe Branch on the inside that he's gone around. Puts him a lap down. Brian Carey, Pavelski, the rest of your top 3, then Brophy and Ray Kingsbury holding out. There are 9 drivers that have not yet hit pit lane. Matt Holliba is the last of them. Stouffer peels off. Carey peels off. Pavelski peels off. Here they come. It's busy down there on pit lane. Someone's throwing a party, I think.
Another indicator that Brophy might not have been saving as much as we suspected. He's pitting with everybody else. He didn't gain another lap unless he short fills and gains a bunch of positions here, but I don't know that I would play that card this early in the race. I think a lot's happened. We're only a third of the way into this one.
Yeah, it's a long race. And you mentioned, not being able to save enough to go an extra lap. Let me remind you, it's a 2.5-mile racetrack. You got to save a lot of fuel to get an extra lap, and you're full throttle through most of it. So it's that's a challenge to do that all by itself. Philip Kraus should cycle back to the top spot, and he will. Andrew Kinsella up to 2nd, Stouffer to 3rd as he leaves pit lane. Drop to 4th, Andrew Wood goes by. So there is your race leader. There's 2nd place. 3rd place, Andrew Wood. 4th place, Chris Stouffer. 5th place, Brian Carey. Watkins with a huge head of steam at the exit of turn 1. He's going to make this pass look easy. Unless he decides to stay in line, which he will not do. Oh, that's going to be a touch, and Carey's in the fence hard at the exit of the tunnel turn. He just got run up the racetrack there, Tom. That was a little naughty on Watkins' part.
It happened so fast. It was a little awkward looking from that perspective.
It's caution.
We're looking as far across the track as we were, but green flag pit stops all of a sudden don't matter as much. Straight back to the caution.
Yeah. 24 just got in there, just washed up, and just slammed Brian Carey there.
That perspective tells the whole story for sure.
That's a frustrating way to end. Carey didn't really do anything wrong there, Tom.
Well, you mentioned it's a game of chicken down in the turn 2, and it's less banking than turn 1. It's not that steep of a corner, and pretty easy to get in there a little too quick.
Oh, did anybody hit? Oh, did Henry Bennett get a piece of that debris? Right on board here. See if he gets a piece of this. That debris at that speed can mess stuff up. He's skittering across. Wow, he missed it. Did Brophy catch it? car hits the fence, Bree comes off, and whoop, managed to warp right through it there, Tom. That's the luck of the draw. Good for him. So with that being said, I don't think we're going to see any pit stops this time by. We trapped, I think Flynn Lazier got trapped a lap down, but everyone else had just finished cycling out. So with that, we're going to take another break. And another piece, these video pieces you've been seeing are from Catalyst 317, which we mentioned are a digital content video production team, and they do amazing work. And we'll step away and show you another Catalyst 317 piece here in just a moment.
What's in a name? Everybody's got one. It's an identification, a label, a brand. How do you make your name? How do you earn it? A name can make you feel a certain way just by hearing it. It can stir an emotion or wake a memory. Sometimes you represent a name. Sometimes it represents you. But some names are different.
25 victories for Michael Andretti.
Some names mean more. Some names are a legacy, a family, and a team.
Hooray! Almost clips the grass. Hey, Dad, watch this. Marco in front of the inside, and now Michael.
Half a lap lead, clutch and coast. Same fuel, clutch and coast.
Brian Hooray wins the Indianapolis 500. What a win! Zach Beach victorious. Marco Andretti wins over Kanan Dixon.
Full throttle, full throttle, full throttle. Checkered flag. You just won the Indy 500, baby! Oh my God. Let's go!
Yeah, some names are a little different. Some names mean everything.
See, it's getting darker and darker, and there's just no way right now for these drivers to know exactly what's going to happen.
These guys are going to have to be really, really careful and tiptoe around the track until it's either
not even 10 minutes into this race, and I feel like we've got enough strategy going on for a whole event, but still a long, long way to go.
There's Yellowstone, there's Yosemite, but for racing fans and for Grid Life's Elkhart Classic, the destination is Road America, the National Park of Speed.
Free ride in the front of the field here. Look at Emil Tab up the inside for the race leaders. We head down to the first corner.
Have no idea what they're coming into. Look at this field. They're 2 wide, 3 wide, a couple places slipping.
Side by side for the race lead. 54, 48 through 3 and 4. Working lap number 60, 110 laps to go. Yusuf Ghali power move to the bottom of the racetrack, making the short way work. They're going to touch down the hill. This will be a great run for Fuller here.
Yes, if we go ran off the track in the final quarter, that'll lap 4 to get a massive.
Here he comes.
Does he have a look?
Oh, big block there by Sanfilippo. Into the grass goes Ben Fuller toward turn 1, and Sanfilippo hangs on. He's loose. No! And he crashes hard in the exit of turn number 2. Don't try him here, boys. They're going to do it. Gritsko backs out. They touch. They're going to crash. Gritsko going to slam the attenuator hard into the wall, and Jared Tesson hits him as well. And big damage on these cars. That's a huge
number 4. People are struggling for grip, going out of every single lane, even trying to make a run. It's getting really insane.
Powered by AWS for the Intercontinental GT Challenge, powered by Pirelli at the Indianapolis 8-hour. We are 7 hours and 18 minutes into this 8-hour event.
John Miller way deep on the brakes to the inside of turn number 1 and 2. The spin, the 3 car gets turned around in front of the car.
James Houghton looking for a place to go, but he's got Austin Cobb to the inside. A bit of a gap behind. I think that's about 15th or 16th spot as they come out of turn 3. Big slide. Coming to the restart here for the Catalyst 317 400, lap number 68 of 160 after our third caution of the day. Green flag back in the air. Philip Kraus in command, Kinsella, Stouffer, Wood, Watkins, the rest of the top 5, and a clean getaway from the front, too, there, Tom. They left everyone else in the dust.
Yeah, really not a strong restart for Chris Stouffer, but still gaps the rest of the field. Maybe it was actually Andrew Wood that held the field up a bit as he dropped out of line pretty quickly and is now creating a bit of a problem for himself and a bunch of his teammates. Watkins around the high side in the black car, continuing to fall is Andrew Wood down to 6th, almost 7th.
Yeah, he's not going the right direction. Pavelski on the outside. None of these drivers pit under that caution sequence. They had just come out onto the racetrack a moment prior. So slightly varying tires, but we haven't seen the tire wear be a big deal. Only worth 2 to 3 tenths of a second, which isn't all that much over the course of a run. Certainly not like what you see on a stock car. So I don't think the tire difference is going to be a huge deal, and we should take that into account later in the race when we're comparing how long someone's been out on the racetrack. I don't think having 15 or 20 lap fresher tires is going to do you a lot of good. I think track position matters a lot. Late race caution, I'm staying out.
Maybe not this early in the race. It doesn't matter. It may, but check out the only driver who pit during the caution, Jason Brophy in the 88. Sits 22nd on the field, and he's only got 1 lap on this stint right now. So as far as I can tell, he's the only one that took the advantage to do that. This is really heavy between Kingsbury and Pavelski, 7th and 8th. Kingsbury, again, your defending race winner from Pocono 2 years ago. It was a very different game then, but...
Do we know that Brophy was on pit lane?
Oh, actually, that's interesting. He's still on pit lane. That's a nightmare.
He's been on pit lane since the caution sequence. I don't know exactly why. I don't see a lot of the front wings on that car and everything. He's out of the car, though, so for whatever reason, Brophy is off track and seemingly done for the day. Well, that's a weird one. Here's Henry Bennett tucking in front of Ray Kingsbury and Wilson Nito. Ever since that restart, a couple of restarts ago, he has not been able to do anything with his 12th place position. He's been stuck here.
Henry Bennett's the other car I was curious about. Was battling for the lead at phases of this race and now is mired in 8th. Kind of hard to tell why he ended up that far back, but look at Nito working the high line, trying to stay out of the aero wash from the cars in front. Malechka in the middle of the track, Cahill at the bottom. Malechka now shows the nose up the inside for turn 1 as they start lap number 71. We're closing in on halfway. We're almost there.
Sailing off into the first corner. I'll bet the second half of this race ticks off a little bit quicker with potentially fewer caution flags. That will speed things up as well. Wow, door slammed on the corner exit. Malechka comes across the nose of Cahill. I don't think Cahill liked that very much. There's Nito and Joe Branch for 12th. Joe Branch was a lap down prior to that caution flag. And with the way the pit cycled out, he ended up now back in 13th place. So this is a good recovery and a good save with the caution flag. Started near the tail of the race and has just had a quiet, good day. And sometimes a good day, Tom, is the ones that you don't talk about. If we're not talking about a driver, doesn't either have it. If we talk about you, you're either having a really good day or a really bad day. If you're running somewhere in the middle, you're probably doing okay.
And I suspect he's done this before this season. The driver we certainly haven't talked about a lot, but he sits 11th in the championship, which is pretty solid. He's got a 13th, a 5th, a 17th. So yeah, he's just been ticking off some pretty good races. Had a little bit of a worse finish in Texas last week, 25th. But a nice consistent performance from the driver in the Coke car.
Tanner Watkins up to 4th, continuing his drive, and Christopher as well. Remember, he's rebounding from not getting in his pit stall correctly on the first caution of the night, and he has essentially erased all of that mistake and is now running in 3rd. But can't afford to do that again, though. It took him a long time to get back here.
Look at the pace Philip Kraus has. Last time across the board with no assistance, a 41.9. That is one of the fastest laps of the entire race. He also has the fastest lap of the race at a 41.8. That's his personal best. This 19 car is really, really fast. We didn't see it in qualifying, but his race pace just seems to really be on fire.
Yeah, and Kinsella's best lap is only about a 10th off of Kraus's, but was 4/10 slower last time by, so.
Yeah, I misspoke. It's actually Andrew Wood that has the fastest lap of the race, but those 500s between the two, Kraus and Wood, not that big of a deal.
Not that big of a deal, and I don't care how fast your lap is. If you can't translate it into race pace, it's not going to do you any good. Here is Wood, the inside of the 24 of Watkins. This is for 5th. Showen got by Watkins on the previous lap. And Watkins going the wrong direction here. Pretty quickly dropping down a few spots. I can already sense everyone's calmed down a little bit. This feels very different than the previous runs. We're all strung out a lot quicker, and everyone's making more level-headed moves here. We've lost about 11 drivers out of this race, so it makes sense that things are starting to calm down, and now just ticking off laps here, Tom. About an hour until this thing's over, just ticking off laps.
We talked about there has to be a tipping point at some point, and maybe it's a third of the field dropping out of the race. Maybe it's 75 laps complete, but now we're getting down to kind of 2-car duels where we had 4 to 6, maybe even 7-car brawls earlier on. And Tanner Watkins submits that position to Matt Pavelski for 6th.
He's going backwards pretty quickly, not the direction you want to be going at this stage of the race.
The other thing I wonder is some of the drivers that have worked their way forward in those melees early on, are they starting to show chinks in the armor with maybe raw pace being a little more important than racecraft and taking chances? Because drivers like Watkins, Wood, a couple others come to mind that are maybe even off track, Austin Espedy, Brian Carey, those cars, they didn't make it through those brawls or are now starting to slip behind, where the drivers that we kind of expected are starting to rise back towards the top.
There's Andreas Eich in the 76. Where has he been all day today? Just not the pace that we would have expected to see. Right now running down in 17th spot. And remember, up until last week, he had finished third at every round this season. He was battling for the points lead, but today, the pace is just not there.
Well, in talking about Christopher Demerit early on in this race, we talked about even if he has a 10th or, best case, a top 5 day, he's got such a good run in the championship going that he doesn't need to lay everybody to waste tonight. He just needs to finish the race, and he got caught up in a position and couldn't finish the race tonight. Do you think maybe Andreas Eich is just thinking, I just got to cruise. I got to take no risks at all, because now he's looking around at the rest of the cars on track. Other than Andrew Kinsella, he's really in a good position to extend a championship lead, reclaim the lead, and pull one back out.
Yeah, for sure. Checking in on Jason Brophy, thanks to Evan Adams, we heard that coming to the restart, he actually checked the field up and got hit and came down to fix some damage. He's back out on track 4 laps down, but the driver that sat on pole I don't think is going to win this race today, which is a shame, but he looked like he was struggling for pace, at least in the top half of the top 10, so I'm not sure he would have won regardless, but it's certainly going to sting, especially when you have an incident under yellow like that. Look up to Andrew Wood, another driver that we've seen in other IndyCar series in the past. 18th to 5th, right direction for this car. Pavelski behind him. Matt Pavelski has been on the bottom half of the top 10 and the lower half of the top 15. Started 22nd, he's up to 6th, the best he's run all day. Seeing this line migrate up the racetrack, have you noticed that? Everyone's sort of shifted 2 lanes up in turn 1.
Turn 1 is a big surprise for me. I've seen even drivers working the wall almost on the very top of the racetrack, and we just saw Andrew Wood with a massive push on the exit of turn 1 when he tried to run down low. The track just put him back in the middle where everybody else has kind of started to run. So more lines here than I expected. Again, if you haven't been watching the whole season, I'm not the most experienced on oval track racing, but I'm definitely a bit surprised with that high line working in turn 1.
Good news for you is that technically this isn't an oval.
There you go.
A couple cars sticking to the bottom through turn 1, but then as you get farther back in the field, a lot more running out high. There's Malechka and Wilson Nito. This is for 10th. Nito, the qualifying pace has been there all year. We've said it over and over and over again. The luck has also not been there. Today was running well, but he's gotten trapped, and I just don't think he's got this car set up for running in traffic. It just seems like he's good on his own in a vacuum, but we're not in a vacuum. We're on a racetrack with 25 cars, and it's just not going the way he wants it to go.
He has been as far up as, I think, battling for 3rd, and now sits in 11th, stuck in the wake behind Robert Malechka. So he's not even in the top 10 right now. But again, he's been all over the field. You see, he started at 9th, up to 3rd at one point, down to 11th. Yo-yoing for sure, so maybe he can finish this race on an upswing and find his way back up there, but I agree, it's not looking super strong. Look how much scrub he had through turn 1.
Yeah, there's something up with this car. He did not get it turned in, and it looked really tight through the center of the racetrack, so you fight that time. You set the car up to be stable, and you end up making it tight. There's not really a lot of in between. The car is either loose and deadly or tight and stable, and a lot of drivers would prefer the loose and deadly because you get a little bit more control as a driver. But in these Indy cars, at the speeds you're traveling, when it steps out fast, and there's not really a chance to catch it. And if you do catch it, you're going dead right into the outside wall. So there's a delicate balance. Do you want to finish the race or do you want to be fast?
Or as we've seen tonight, you end up in the pit lane, but at 200 miles an hour and into the pit wall.
Yeah, that's not a great place either. There is a pit road speed limit, and crashing sideways at 150 is not the speed limit. David Adams in the 00. This team in past seasons has been much, much faster and more complete collectively. This year, I haven't really seen them really step out and show that they're capable of winning races. John Downing, David Adams. Downing actually missed the race. He was here and attempted to qualify but didn't make it. So not sure what's going on with this team, but they just are missing something. They were much better on the car on the previous tire. As soon as it switched to the new tire, something's different.
That's the first thing I thought of. If this season the car received a major update with a completely new tire model about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at most, before the first race of the season. And if you're used to the car being one way and you get a massive update like that, sometimes it just takes a while for things to come around. Maybe you just don't even like the feel of the car anymore at all. So that has to be certainly a factor in why they maybe aren't finding the success they used to have.
The biggest change that I heard from people on this car with the new tire is that they said it drove way better on the road courses, but way tighter on the oval tracks. It just was more snug, more stable, but pushier. On the road courses, they love it. They think it's a massive improvement. On the oval side, it's been a bit of a mixed review. Maybe that it drives realistically. That's sort of, they race like they race in the real world, but they're hard in the real world. They kind of push, and that's what they're dealing with all season long. And how to make your car turn and not crash is really the biggest challenge that these teams have been fighting all year long.
That is certainly my experience with all the cars across the board on a road course. That's typically what I'm driving on, and anytime I'm driving a car that's received a similar treatment update to this tire model, it drives infinitely more realistic. Certain drivers don't like it, certain drivers do. Certain cars aren't as fun, certain cars are way more fun. So it's certainly a personal feel thing, and if you're used to the car being awesome and all of a sudden it's less awesome, no matter the discipline, if you're on an oval, if you're on a road course, whatever, it's usually not as fun.
Yeah, and there still are some outlying issues that have to be solved. I know, grip rolling is still a thing in some of the cars. You get curbs on the opening lap, you can still roll the car over. But for the most part, it's been a massively good change, I think, across the board. There are some cars like the Porsche 911 Cup car, the Cayman GT4. Those are just such engaging cars to drive. And this car on the road course is an absolute blast. On the oval side, though, things are a lot more challenging. And I've actually heard people say that on the NASCAR side that they'd like to revert to the previous tire, not because of how the car handles, but because of how the track operates. Now, remember that iRacing has a dynamic track model, and on road courses it matters a little bit. On ovals, it is the entire experience. How the lines shift around, where the rubber gets laid down, how the track heats up and collects temperature, all influences, especially in the stock cars, what lines you can run. The biggest thing about this tire is that it doesn't heat the track up as much, and thus has had a less significant impact on the dynamic track and leads to some very single groove racing on the stock car side. IndyCar hasn't been such a big deal, but there's still quirks to work out. Kinsella hits pit lane. And we're right at the end of our.
I was going to say, while we were kind of watching through the field, we've run up through a full green flag stint, and Andrew Kinsella is the first to take to the pit lane. In the meantime, Philip Kraus had pulled out almost a 3-second lead on Rob Pace alone up at the front, and he's gone another lap than these guys are going as well. So that car is really hooked up and not really burning itself down. In the meantime, he has clear track. He stays out, but Kinsella on the pit lane. There's Kraus.
He's led 35 laps this race. Which I believe is nearing a race high. I think the other car that led a whole bunch of laps early was the 007. He led 37 laps. As Andrew Wood's going to hit pit lane, get the car woed on down. And this pit lane has been a little tricky. We've seen a couple drivers lock up and spin on entry. But Andrew Wood gets down to pace just nicely. So Kraus continues to make laps around here. Running, again, 27 laps is the longest we've seen anybody go, but remember, Kraus has not followed anybody this entire run. So he'll probably have to hit pit lane either this time or next. I don't think he can go all 27.
I suspected last lap, so I'm pretty surprised he's out even now, but I almost guarantee he's got to go low this time through the exit of turn 3 and hit the pit lane, and indeed he does. One of the last cars to pit, really, certainly in the top 10.
Yeah, maybe one of the last cars to pit on this tire cycle. Chris Stouffer still is going to go another lap. So will Schowen, Pavelski, Tanner Watkins, Henry Bennett, now just hitting their 24th and 25th laps. And that means if you think about how many, we're pitting basically every 25 laps. We've got, at least 2 more pit stops, at least 3 more pit stops scheduled for the day. So 25 will take us to about 115 or so. And then again to lap 140-ish. So 2 more pit stops after this will get you to the end of the race. Which is my rough math and rough guesstimation.
Yes.
So now you know what you got now. You know exactly what you need to win this race. And this is the time when you can make your impact here. Now remember, we didn't quite go a full green flag run. We had the caution right at the the end of our previous cycle. So this is likely going to be the first green-to-green cycle that we're going to see, this one between lap 90 and 115. So if you're going to set your car up to be trimmed out and run it all by yourself, this is the time to get it set up like that. What you got to do to the weight jacker, what you got to do to the tire pressures, make those changes now, because you're going to be by yourself probably for a little while.
Well, if this thing stays as green as it has been for the rest of the race, you got to put all your chips on Philip Kraus, because he had pulled out again a 3-second lead. It's gone even further since. Kinsella now 3.1, almost 3.2 seconds back. There's the gap between the two of them. That's what 3 seconds looks like at 200 miles an hour. It's massive. No one can touch that car on raw pace as far as we can see right now. So without a caution to interrupt that for the rest of the field, Kraus is really looking good.
Yeah, 70 laps to go this time by, so we're past halfway by over 10 laps. And, you know, you talk about Kraus being in a pretty good spot here, yes. But as the race goes on, the track's going to change a little bit. I just mentioned that dynamic track. It could change just enough to give Kinsella an edge here. The other thing is, we're assuming that Kinsella hasn't made any changes. Last time by, he was 0.2 slower, though, so maybe those changes weren't in the right direction.
He lost, yeah, 3.5 now. He lost almost a half a second since we last mentioned the gap, and that was less than 2 laps ago. So the 19 car is really, really strong. And again, if there's no way for the field to recompress, there's no caution, there's nothing like that to happen, no one's catching him right now.
And Adam Crane brought up a really good point in chat about the dynamic track surfaces. One of the things that iRacing does not model is different grip across a lane of a surface. Basically, there's one grip level for all of the asphalt and all of the concrete on any given racetrack. So while in real life the bottom grooves might be more slicked out, just because that they've got they've been run over more, for lack of a better term, or steamrolled smooth. The upper grooves might be a little bit rougher because they haven't been driven on quite as much, and that extra roughness is a lot of extra grip that you can have. So having one abrasion level across the surface is a detriment to multi-groove racing, and a good point to bring up. So thanks, Adam, for that insight. Pavelski hits pit lane. The last couple drivers, Dan Ench, Andreas Eich, and Wilson Nito. This will give the lead back to Philip Kraus. Now, across the line this time. Let's keep an eye on their lap times here, Tom. 42.18. That's more on line with what Andrew Kinsella was running. And Kinsella comes across the line. That time was a 42.413, so 0.3 slower again. Not looking good here early. However, Kraus could be overdriving a little bit, but he's been pretty rock solid so far.
That is possible. Chris Stouffer is also lurking in the background of Andrew Kinsella. So there goes Kraus through a turn 2. And the gap back to Kinsella. Stouffer looked a little smaller when they were off in the distance. It is a fairly sizable gap of close to 2 seconds. But Stouffer was quicker by a teeny bit last time through and looks to be closing up even more this time.
Tony Schowen just got by Pavelski for 4th. There's Andrew Wood in the background, 3-car fight for P4. Schowen really coming into his own. I remember last year when this is actually the first race that we ever broadcasted for the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series back about a year or 2 ago. And Schowen, I believe, led a whole bunch of laps in the early going of the Pocono race there. So it makes sense to me that he's driving forward. And last time by was quicker than Andrew Kinsella. So he could be as high as 3rd here, left in a vacuum to run all the way to the end of the race. Ray Kingsbury and Malechka, they've been going back and forth a little bit. Kingsbury slams the door shut into the tunnel turn.
Late corner lift, maybe a little bit of push. If you're talking about the temperature in the tire, the track changing. Kingsbury coming out of the throttle that late in the corner tells me that car's not particularly happy. Listen to the throttle control from Nito too, really pedaling it with dealing with aero wash from in front. This car is just seems to be stuck outside the top 10 now after he had been so high before.
Yeah, this car I think is just not set up for traffic, and he's just struggling so badly with understeer. And you can hear it. He's out of the throttle more than anybody else, and it's just not working the way that he wants it to. Trying to get by Malechka here for 10th. I'm going to take a stab and guess that Nito's running lower downforce than everybody else, because you see him making gains on straightaways. It's struggling in the corners, especially underneath people. So I don't think he's got the downforce level in that car that he needs to be aggressive. But you see him in turn 3 and 4, and I bet you down the straightaway here with the aid of the slipstream should make some ground here on Malechka. .224 off into turn 1. Gap is stabilized at the front, 4 seconds between Kraus and Kinsella. Kinsella actually knocked a 10th out last time by.
I was going to say, for the first time in the last 10 to 15 laps, Kinsella was quicker. So that is a good sign that this thing might come back to somebody other than Kraus, but 4 seconds, I mean, that's a long way to cover on a 42nd lap. The 10th of the race, of the lap distance is what the lead is right now.
55 laps to go, or 65 laps to go rather, as we come across the line. Here's Schowen and Pavelski, 2/10 between them. Closest battle on the racetrack at the moment. Jason Brophy heads down pit lane. And we'll head back out. This has got to be so painful. All you're really doing if you're Jason Brophy right now is you're running for the cars that are going to crash later and hoping that you'll gain a spot or two. But you're not going to come back from 4 laps down with only 65 laps to go. This is almost an insurmountable charge. And I'd say that he will finish outside of the top 20 if we go green to the end from here. Here's Schowen Pavelski with a huge run. Pavelski's going to sail on through back to 4th place by Schowen. Here comes Schowen back. Dogfight for 4th place. Oh,
that was close. Schowen washed up just a little bit. Pavelski dropped off the throttle, I think, to make sure he didn't get cut off too hard. But now Schowen protecting down towards turn 2. Massive draft up to Pavelski until he lifts and decides this is going to go single file this time.
Yeah, at a certain point down that Long Pond straight, you have to know, look at the run that he gets into turn 3. This is the second time in 2 laps that he's had a much better run than Stouffer. We'll take that spot away. You know who's watching this from behind is Andrew Wood, saying, "Guys, why don't you guys keep doing that? Swap a few more times. I'll drive myself up inside the top 5. That's where he's headed."
Took 2/10 out of him last time across the line. At the front, Kinsella was marginally quicker than Kraus once again. Just of note, man, they really wash high through turn 1. I think Schowen tries to take a spot and overdrives turn 1, takes both of them up high, and Wood took another chunk of time out of him. He's basically joined that battle.
He sure has. Wilson Nito to the inside of Ray Kingsbury. That's for 9th. Dead even into turn 3. Kingsbury on the outside trying to roll some momentum. Nito on the inside trying to carry it. Not quite clear.
Finally having disposed of Robert Malechka, who's back a second, just out of frame on the right side. But Nito picks up the spot from Kingsbury. Kingsbury now to 10th.
Drops him back a spot and back up to Pavelski and Schowen. They did not trade spots in turn 3 as they'd done a few laps prior. But here comes a big run. I don't think he's going to sit on it this time. He doesn't. He's going to go for it into the tunnel turn.
I almost think Schowen has to be running a much higher downforce setup for that amount of speed for Pavelski to come from behind like that.
We didn't see him doing this interaction before, though, which is why this is strange. I didn't really think Schowen was set up like that. You see a big push through 3 and almost at 3 and 4 again, turn 3.
Maybe like a swear jar for you.
I think we do.
Pocono jar.
Pocono jar.
Turn 4 jar. There we go.
Joe Branch up to 11th. He's actually found a lot of pace here in the last little bit. Quicker than a handful of drivers ahead of him in that number 28 Coca-Cola IR18, running 11th after starting in 30th. Pretty good day.
Well, with the number of cars that are either not in attendance or out in the top 10 in the championship, this will be a killer day for Joe Branch, even if he just finishes this race anywhere. If you look down the list, Demerit's out, Blocker's not here, Kingsbury's behind him. I think is Oliva still even circulating? Yes, he is, but just behind. So those are all drivers in front of him. Brian Carey's out.
Whoa, block. Andrew Wood cleared Schowen at the exit of turn 3, and Schowen took him all the way to the white line on the front straightaway. Now double wide into turn number 1. Oh, push. That was really close. That was almost a 200-mile-an-hour crash through the first corner. And Schowen lost so much momentum. Here comes Henry Bennett. No way to defend this. The try, though, take him all the way up to the safe barrier, driving very defensively in the mirrors, which has got to be a huge distraction.
And that's another indication that he might be running quite a bit more downforce, because if he's feeling that protective, he knows he needs the track position in the corners to make it work, but the car still looks so pushy there in turn 3. Wood is through and gone, essentially, and now Bennett and Nito have joined him there for 7th.
Yeah, Wilson Nito, talk about coming forward. It took him this long, but now he's finally starting to get some legs under him here.
He's essentially the fastest car on the track. The only car that was as quick was Andrew Kinsella there in second. but Nito was the fastest last time across the line.
Yeah, he's figured something out. I don't know what he's doing different, but all of a sudden he'd been trapped in 12th all race after like the second restart, and now has found something and is moving forward very, very quickly. If he could just finish this race, I think he'd be happy with that. Just the struggles that he had to kick off the season, I'm sure he'd be thrilled just to finish inside the top 10 or even the top 5 tonight. Under 60 laps to go, closing on 55. One more pit stop, or 2 more pit stops rather, to negotiate here. Here's Nito and Shawan for 6th. We'll have to try that one again a little later. Didn't have the run to do it with. Shawan goes defensive again. Here comes Bennett with a run.
Nito set his personal best lap time last time across.
Really?
That was,
yeah.
All of a sudden, this car has a ton of speed.
41.964. Fastest lap that he's run today. Oh, that was a big understeer moment there. He's going to get passed by Bennett. Consequences to lifting mid-corner, and in such a fast area, you're going to get swarmed really quickly.
We tried to run the low line and stay underneath Shawan, but Shawan tucked down low for a later apex and came across the nose, gave a bunch of dirty air to Wilson Nito and pushed them both up high. So Bennett is through. Look at him still working the high line through turn 1. Nito trying to come back on him at the low, and Bennett defends heavily, and now Tanner Watkins is joining this battle as well.
All for 7th place. It was for 6th. But Shawan's using this opportunity to run away. Through turn number 3, Watkins setting up. You actually heard him lift early and turn down to get some air on the nose. And look at the run this built. That was smart driving by Watkins to back up the corner and build the run for the long straightaway that comes after it.
Back at the front, real quick note, the gap was up to 4.2 seconds. It's down to 2.8 seconds. So your speculation of Kraus pushing the car a little too hard is starting to appear to be a little more true than I thought. Honestly, I thought Philip Kraus was just going to continue to pull back out. But Kinsella has found some pace and really hacked that lead down. Whether or not Philip Kraus is in totally control in that situation, maybe letting that breathe a bit or not, who knows? But the top 2 are much closer together than we thought they might be, and now the big gap is for 3rd. Christopher's pretty much gone out of their mirrors.
Well, they don't give you a bigger check for beating the guy by more. So maybe just a bit of gap management, but I agree. Maybe just burning up a little bit too much, went out a little bit too hot, and that's something he's learned. That maybe, okay, next to the run I can back it down just a little bit. And these are, like, this is lifting 5 feet sooner and accelerating 2 feet later. I mean, these are tiny, tiny margins, especially at 200 miles an hour. But if you can just relax a little bit and conserve your stuff, it will pay off in the long run here. 55 laps to go. And Bennett, Nito, and Watkins now fighting for 7th. And as I said, Shawan taking the opportunity to get out of Dodge. He's gone up the road 0.6 of a second. Joe Branch really hugging that yellow line through turn 3. And maybe setting up Cahill for a passing opportunity here on the front straight. We've officially settled into what I would call the meat of the race. No other distractions, just clean and green. Out front, Kraus's lead continues to fall down to 2.2 seconds. But we're about 5 laps away from our second to last pit stop sequence here. So I would expect Kraus to maybe start thinking about that. Kinsella pit 2 laps later. So he's got a little bit more fuel in the tank and can maybe stretch that gap a little bit more. I'm not sure that you'd want to. I think you want to set this up so that you have as little fuel left in the tank at the end as possible without running out.
Oh, certainly, yeah. The first car to pit lane should be Kinsella.
Yeah, I think I spread that backwards. Kinsella's got 2 laps less fuel than Philip Kraus. My mistake there.
He was the first car to pit lane last time through. Kraus stayed out those extra 2 laps. We have a number of cars that still have closer to half their stint to go. Well, not quite, but 16, 17 laps on this run. So the leaders will be among the first cars to pit lane. And as we say that, Kinsella looks to be on pit lane already.
Yeah, and think about the window that this puts him in. If you can go another 20 laps, that will take you to lap 129. That's 30 laps to the end of the race. So that seems to me like he can't go on one more stop.
I'm surprised he pit that early because that was lap 22. So there's, for some reason, the 14 car, I can't
yes.
imagine why he would have been using more fuel, but he seems to be right at 23, and the other cars can do closer to 25 or 26.
Yeah, I made that mistake there. I think if you go 25 laps from here, that will take you to 25 to go, or 26 to go. So you're going to have to save a little bit, but that's a risky call there, I think.
It is, but it's minimizing the amount of time that he's spending now on pit lane to just run flat out for 2 full runs, whereas everybody else is spread out just a little bit. And anytime anything happens, if there's a full course, anything like that, he's in a better position than the rest of the cars, I think.
Yeah, Malechka comes on down. I mean, that's maximizing. If you can go 25 laps, you feel comfortable going 25 laps. This is the earliest you can pit is right now.
Problem is that car has not demonstrated its ability to do 25 laps just yet.
No,
he keeps pitting at 23.
Yeah, that's making me nervous. We've seen that drivers can go 25 with a little bit of help. 27 is the most we've seen today, and that was a little bit of caution help also contributing to that. Kraus going a little bit deeper into the run here. He's on his 23rd lap of the stint. Stouffer in second is also on his 23rd lap. Andrew Wood peels off, and he heads on down. I don't think he was to 20 laps yet.
No, he was not.
But he's going to stretch it out.
I think you're right. A lot of these drivers probably know that this is right around the time where they can definitely make it on one more stop no matter what happens, and then they're just kind of banking on, yes, this is going to put them ahead if there's a full course or anything else. I don't think there's a problem with pitting right now.
Keep an eye on Matt Pavelski, because look at this, 42.1 last time by. That was half a second quicker than the race leader. He is absolutely sailing right now. Problem is, if it takes him 20 laps every run to get to that pace, you're not going to beat Philip Kraus, because he's like our cannon every time he shoots on a restart or green flag run.
Sure, but remember the dynamic between he and Tony Schowen. When they were racing each other, Matt Pavelski's car seems to have just basically no downforce on it. It's a rocket ship in a straight line, and now that the track is cleared out, now that there's only 20 cars circulating, he's got a lot of clear air, which means he doesn't have a lot of aero wash, which means the minimal amount of downforce he's using is working at its maximum ability. Excuse me.
Maximum ability.
Yeah, so that makes sense that now that this car is really running in some clean air, the 75, I mean, it's really quick.
Team I5G running in second right now to Philip Kraus as a couple other drivers peel off the racetrack. Kraus is on his 24th lap, and he can certainly make it from here on one more stop, and now he will peel off and come down pit road. Pavelski will stay out his. He led a lap today. He has, and he will lead a 5th.
I think that was 25 for Kraus again, wasn't it? Was it not?
24 for
24, okay.
Yep. At 25th as he came into the box. So now I'm just the most curious about Kinsella, because he had to go 51 laps on 2 tanks of fuel. That's a long way for me, and he's got a chance, but I think it almost requires a bit of a yellow just for a little bit of safety's sake. And even then, everyone else would be in the same boat as you after that point, so we'll see how it works out. Pavelski stays out yet another lap. I think we'll see him come down maybe next time or the time following.
Yeah, only 22 laps on this stint for both Pavelski and Bennett. Nito's only on 21 laps, so these cars can stay out at least another lap, if not 2.
And it's not so much of a pace difference. Again, we're not seeing huge swings on fresh tires versus, old Firestones, but I think the fuel is the only number anyone's caring to look at right now. Track temperature is coming down only by a couple degrees, but the last couple moments of this race will be a little bit faster than the first few moments of this race. And also, you got fuel maps you can run on these cars as well. My understanding is that they don't massively affect anything, especially at full throttle and open air, but it's something you can play with if you're Kinsella. If they don't affect a lot, they're not going to kill your speed. They might not also save you all that much fuel, but if you only need a tiny, tiny little bit, we've got 30 minutes left in this race. Changing the fuel map just a little bit, just to be a little bit more efficient, might be enough to get you an extra half lap or so.
The hard part is you got to decide now. You can't start saving in 10 minutes or 15
No.
minutes. You got to commit to that strategy right now, which is tough pill to swallow if you know it slows you down just a little bit.
Yeah, that's the one thing that drivers will get themselves in is saving fuel way too late. If you're going to save fuel, you got to do it right out of the gate. Every time that you're under caution, I'm talking specifically about stock car racing, every time you're under caution, shut that motor off. Just coast, because there's no reason that it ever be a bad thing to save fuel. Now, you don't want to shut these cars off because they can't get restarted, so don't do that. But actually, I think they can get restarted. but you got to be rolling and let that clutch out and able to do that.
So 24 laps for Pavelski and 25 for Bennett. They're both on pit lane. Wilson Nito with 24 is going to cross to 25 laps. He stays out the longest of anybody and is the last car to pit on this cycle. He is some 4 laps ahead of some drivers. In fact, he's 7 laps ahead of Andrew Kinsella.
In terms of the fuel situation, yes. Led 1 lap. That was the last one. And looks like he's going to hit pit lane. And right behind him is Philip Kraus in the 19 as we approach the last 45 laps or so of this race. Kraus has been on track for 3 laps. Kinsella is 1 second back here, Tom. So Kinsella gains some ground. It's only 1 second back, and he's almost within drafting distance again, and that might be crucial. If he can get up to the tailpipes of the 19 and draft, that will certainly save him the fuel that he needs.
That's another reason that short fuel, that short window really helped him because, you know, he pit 3 laps earlier than a lot of the cars around him, but he sat on pit lane for 3 laps worth of fuel less than everybody around him. So that's why that gap came down from 2.8 seconds almost to 1.1. He was just stationary on pit lane a lot less time. Now, we say that he's already starting to drop off the back of Kinsella by about 1/10. This thing is going to ebb and flow, but now 2/10 back.
And I'm told that the fuel maps after the new damage model and new tire model introduction, the fuel maps are a lot more effective than they were. So that's good news for Kinsella. Here's a pass for position. Pavelski past Stouffer. And I am keeping my eye on this 75 car because he was fast before the pit stop. And if he's as fast after, he was quickest car on the racetrack lap time by here, Tom, and got a long way to go, enough for Pavelski to run down a 5-second gap at that rate. So
back-to-back 41.9s there, and nearly matches his fastest lap of the race last time by on this, and that's on full fuel. So if the tire wear is not a massive difference, that car shouldn't slow down much.
No, and a 2/10 gain from here to the end of this race will get him awful close. So I like the pace that Pavelski's got. The question is he going to be able to maintain that difference in pace, or will the front two maybe start to battle amongst themselves and make that gap completely go away? Kinsella, though, last time by, is starting to just lose the tail end of that draft off of Philip Kraus. Was 200 slower last time by, but it was definitely a loss.
The other problem for Pavelski is he's now got company. Chris Stouffer is right with him for 4th, so he cannot have any sort of bickering for 3rd. Meanwhile, Wilson Nito, big move up the inside of Robert Malechka, who these two are another pair that cannot get away from each other for the last 50 laps or so.
That just drives you crazy because you've been following the same guy all day long, and that's the 5th time you've cut me off, Robert. and you're just getting real tired of seeing the same. And that can be real aggravating as a driver. You just get a change of scenery sometimes, and that's why I think drivers make some crazy pit calls sometimes. They just want to get something different, mix it up, because you're not going to win doing the same old if you're running 9th. Henry Bennett led a whole bunch of laps early in this race. Haven't seen the dominance in the second half that we saw at the beginning.
Oh, something happened to Kinsella last time through. He's lost a full second. 43.3. Maybe he had a big moment.
Let's go back.
Way off pace last time through, and you can see the gap. It's just massive.
This is rolling through turn 3.
He was much closer than this, so it would have happened before.
Right here. Probably through the tunnel turn. Let's ride on board. Following in line here, turns in. Oh, right here. Wow, big slide. And that is a clench moment right there for Andrew Kinsella. That was almost disaster. Here's another look. Wow, that car was crashed. That's a crash for me. That's about as crash as you can crash a car without crashing.
I'm shocked he saved that and only lost a second, too. I mean, that's a huge incident. From here, it looks like nothing, but we're a half a mile away on the camera there. Take a look at the hands, how fast he responds.
Not a lot of drivers in the field. And he reacts so calmly, didn't overcorrect, didn't make any mistake with the hands there. Just, there's not a lot of drivers that could have come out of that and walked away. So I would consider that a victory for Kinsella, if nothing else is.
And a car with ABS wouldn't have saved like that because he needed to lock the front tires and basically make the car slide for a second to bring it back. If it had ABS, the thing would have been gone.
Across the line here, Henry Bennett dealing with Nito and Tony Schowen drops to 8th. But look at the difference. The top 5 is a much different top 5 than we're used to seeing. Kraus isn't all that much of a stranger. Kinsella certainly isn't. Pavelski, Stouffer, Wood, some names that we've seen around the front but haven't really gotten the finishes they've deserved this season. And today, as long as things go the way they're planning, they will get the finishes they deserve.
And we predicted that just from practice. We saw a lot of new names at the top in practice, and I think that's just because of how unique a challenge Pocono is and how unique of a challenge you have to be able to wrap your head around something completely different tonight. And on top of that, a full field of cars where we haven't had full fields. I think last week we had only 25 or so cars. Now we had 36. So just a lot of cars, and things went wrong for people just in chaos in traffic.
Nito into turn 1, trying the upper groove again. Closing in on the last 35 laps of this race. You're watching Sim TV. If you've been hanging around and you're not subscribed, you should be. We've got plenty more of the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series coming up this year, as well as the final 2 rounds of the Catalyst 317 Triple Crown. You're watching the Catalyst 317 400 from Pocono. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman. Thanks for joining us for the closing moments, the last 25 minutes or so. One more fuel stop, and that'll be it on pit lane for the rest of the day. And Andrew Kinsella is eating back into that lead that Philip Kraus had. So is Matt Pavelski in the 75 car in third. He's gotten that lead down from 5 seconds down to 3.1. Oh, no, it's 3.1 to Kinsella. Still 5.1, my mistake there, to the race leader.
Well, the other thing we have to really consider now, obviously we talked about Kinsella's issues. He's got to go 51 laps on 1 or 2 tanks of fuel, which is at least 1, if not 2 laps further than we think the car can do at flat-out pace. Kraus is comfortable, but Pavelski is 4 laps shorter on fuel than Kraus. 12 laps to 8 laps, now 9 across the board that time. So Andrew Kinsella is actually 6 laps, almost 7 laps further on the fuel run than Matt Pavelski is, which just means Matt Pavelski is going to sit still on pit lane a lot shorter time than the top 2 cars. He might be in a much better spot when they've done that final pit stop. Everybody sits still and fills for a final run to the green, to the checkered, I should say.
Final run to the green.
Final run to the checkered. That's going to be, it's got to be at least a second and a half, if not 2, of the 2.8 seconds he's got to make up.
I like where Kinsella's car is at, though. Look at 42.2 last time, by another 1/10 and a half quicker than the race leader. Kinsella is going the right way. However, the driver behind him, Pavelski, is still going faster. And that time he did eat into the lead, 4.6 now. So this front 3, again, is sort of coordinating back together. But there's the pit stop coming up in about 10 laps for Kraus and about 8 laps for Kinsella. Once we get out of our final stop, I think we're going to know where we're at and where people kind of shuffle around with the fuel they have to take. I think that Kinsella is setting himself up for a run here to the victory. Kraus is going to have to watch his mirrors, but right now it'd be hard to root against Kraus, given that he has been the dominant factor in most of the last half of this race.
You just see the visual. These cars are definitely coming together. All 3 in the same shot on the front straightaway there. Kraus down into turn 1 to start lap number 127 of 160. And lap time through, Kraus, Kinsella were basically the same, but Pavelski takes another 2/10 out of it.
4.3 back. This is the calm before the storm. Everyone's separated, kind of running their own race. The start of this was absolutely insane. We saw 4 or 5 wide, lots of battles for the first 50 or 60 laps. Then things started to kind of settle in. And now for the last 50 or 60 laps, we've sort of been in this single file, kind of clicking off laps mode. And I think we're about to exit out of that, at least with the front 3, and start that brawl again towards the front after the final pit stop.
I think we said in the first, maybe second caution period that you're basically not really racing anybody. You're just setting yourself up for success in the final stint. And we've basically narrowed it down to maybe at best 3 cars that are set up to win this race. I would argue potentially only 2, depending on how much faster Matt Pavelski stays. But he's taken 2/10 per lap out of the leaders for the last at least half dozen laps.
He is absolutely crushing it right now. 3.8 back from the race leader, 2.5 back from Kinsella. Now, here's the crucial part. If he gets to Kinsella, he can't futz around with that 14 car. Get by him quickly, because then you can focus on running Kraus down, because once we get down to the last fuel run, you better be within a second or 2 if you want to honestly have a good scrap. Because remember how good Philip Kraus is on fresh tires. He lights it up and it's gone.
3/10 again out of the lead between Pavelski and Kraus. The other thing I wonder, now that we know that those fuel maps are a little bit more effective than we thought before, do you think that Pavelski knows he's ahead on laps and is maybe turned the car up to full power and the other two cars running a little bit less?
If he's got teammates talking in his ear, maybe, but I'm not sure that you're that in tune with exactly everyone's situation. Yeah. I'd be impressed if you could be going this fast and do all those computations in your head. You might have your team helping you out. I know there's a group of them rooting in the chat here, so that they might be kind of feeding him information on what he has to do, but I think on raw pace, he's going to get there anyway. 30 laps to go next time by. About 2 hours into this broadcast and only 20 minutes remaining for the Catalyst 317-400. And just over 70 miles remaining in this event. Malechka and Branch, this is side by side for 10th. Joe Branch wants in. Malechka wants to stay there. Kinsella has run Kraus back down to 1 second back. He's in the draft again. Pavelski, 0.2 quicker than the race leader, still 3.5 back. And you already see Kraus starting to run a different line. He feels the pressure from behind. He started to kind of break out, run all the way down to the bottom of the racetrack, trying to break that draft. I think we're going to see it again on the front straightaway. He knows that Kinsella's close, so he's going to start weaving to try to break that draft and keep Kinsella out of that the clean drafting air that he could get in behind. Watch this again on the front straight. Now he's going to stay up against the fence. Gained about 1.5 tenths. Feels like he's just out of the danger zone here. Pavelski a little slower, 42.1, but still faster than the race leader.
Coming quick, though. Kinsella is almost within a second, 1.1 now from turn 1, but he seems to be much quicker through turns 2 and 3. And Pavelski has shut that gap down from 2.8, maybe 5 laps ago, to 2.2. Now, it's not going to be quite enough, but again, that 75 car is going to sit still on pit lane a lot less.
Well, crucial moment approaching here for Andrew Kinsella. We have 28 laps to go. It'll be 27 this time by, and here he comes. Kinsella into pit lane. That's a long way to go on that final run. 27 laps. Ooh, man, I don't know if he can make that. He must think he can.
We've seen cars do it, but I think he needed to average those two out a little bit better, and that's probably looking like a splash and go, in my opinion, for that car, which is kind of heartbreaking because we suspected that one was going to come down to a photo finish. We might have had our first side-by-side at the checkers.
Well, there's another dog in the race.
It sure is.
And it's Pavelski, and he is still lapping quicker than Philip Kraus. And now with Kinsella out of the way, he can focus on just running the 19 car down. He's got a little bit more security even than Kraus does because he's got 3 more laps of fuel. I'm not sure that really matters because they're both good to the end.
They're both good to the end, but it's just the amount of time you sit still to fill the car till it's good to the end. I think Pavelski's got to pit the same exact time Kraus does. He's just got to respond. When Kraus goes to pit lane, Pavelski pits too, and he will sit there for, I bet, maybe a second less, maybe up to 1.5 seconds less than Kraus.
I agree. I think following him in is great. I think Philip Kraus, the problem is he, whatever he does, I think Pavelski is just going to do. I think Kraus is at the disadvantage of he can't fool Pavelski into anything because Pavelski has the upper hand here. He's got more fuel. He's got more pace. He's got everything he needs to do to run Kraus down. It just comes down to how Pavelski can execute here in the final 26 laps of this race, and that's how many we have to go. Next time by, they'll be in their window. I think they're going to go a few more laps just to make sure. Trying to see if that was Ray Kingsbury that went a lap down. Don't believe it is.
It's Flynn Lazier.
It is Flynn Lazier. Nice catch. Not a day that Lazier probably super thrilled with, but still running inside the top 20, so can't say it's a terrible day.
Still running in this one is a success in itself.
Yeah.
So many cars, nearly half the field is grayed out on our screen sitting on the pit lane or completely disconnected.
Henry Bennett and Wilson Nito battling for 4th. Again, this isn't really true 4th with a couple of the cars that have already made their pit stop, their final stop of the day in theory.
Andrew Wood did, as did Robert Malechka.
Stouffer hits pit lane from inside the top 5. He comes on down. So Henry Bennett led a whole bunch of laps, almost 40 earlier in the race, but he has not been up at the front since prior to the halfway point. Philip Kraus, however, has been absolutely on it. He has led 75 laps, and he is likely going to lead the most laps today and clinch that number if he leads 5 more. He's definitely in his window this time by, so he can make it to the end on fuel from here, given that he has started his 24th lap of fuel, and there is 24 laps to go.
Philip Kraus pulling out about a 10.5. Only a 10th on Matt Pavelski last time through, but Pavelski had to deal with Flynn Lazira's traffic for a much longer duration of the lap than Kraus did. Kraus med passed down the start-finish straightaway, but now more lap traffic coming into effect. Now Kraus is on lap 24, crossing to lap 25. Does he stay low out of turn 3? I think this is probably his prime opportunity, and he does.
Here he comes, Philip Kraus to pit lane, final stop of the day. Getting it woed on down. Pavelski's going to stay out. This was a big strategy mistake because he's got traffic in the way here, Tom. This will slow him down. Pavelski should have followed.
And maybe he just couldn't react fast enough. You hear how early the drivers have to lift at the apex of turn 3, essentially, and really get the car woed down because that pit lane entry comes up fast for how fast these cars are going. I don't think it's a nail in the coffin so much.
No. But I feel like that was a strategic mistake in my mind.
I think his best shot was to pit when the leader did, and he didn't. So
he was faster. I mean, he would have run him down. I think he's trying to.
Well, he would have had a draft.
Yeah, I think the other thing is he might try to just leapfrog him in the pits, but that was too big of a gap, I think, to leapfrog. So we'll see. He's going to respond this time through. Pavelski hits pit lane. Where did the leader come out? Kraus spent 8.5 seconds on pit lane. That's a pretty long stop, actually. So if Pavelski goes quicker, he might come out either even or in front of Philip Kraus. Last pit stop for Pavelski. It's got to be the money stop. Don't make a mistake pulling into your box. Here he goes. Pretty ginger on in. Stops pretty short in the box. Up on the jacks. Where is the 19 car entering turn number 3? Pavelski's free and clear. A 7.9 second stop. He's going to have this here, I think, but a long way to run down pit lane. Here is Kraus out of turn. Oh, no.
No, the gap between the two was about 2.8 seconds. He only beat him on pit lane by maybe 8/10. So he really needed to not do that extra lap. He would have sat still for much less time and still been within drafting distance of Philip Kraus. But that, I think, now leaves the gap at 2.3 seconds. That's not within drafting distance.
It's going to grow, too.
And it's going to grow for the remainder of this outlap, up over 3 now. He lost time on that exchange.
Yeah, and you want to know why. If you look at the time that actually, in theory, he should have gained, but we only see the time from when you enter pit lane to when you exit pit lane. I think he lost time getting woed down. I think he was way too conservative coming in, and that cost him dearly. It's a 3.5 second gap now. He's going to have to find some extra legs here. 20 laps to go.
Check out who cycled in front of all of them, though. Andrew Kinsella. He's at the front of this field. If he can make it till the end, we don't think he can. We really don't think he can. But if he can, somehow, he now holds a 1.5 second lead over the car third in that train, that one right there, Kraus.
Well, I think Pavelski's best friend is Andrew Kinsella, because all he can hope, if Kinsella can't make it, all he can do is battle with Philip Kraus, and that might bring Pavelski back into the mix here. So this is going to get a little interesting. We're going to throw a couple race cars in a blender and see what comes out. Hopefully it's a tasty treat and a victory, but I don't know if it's going to be any of the three. They could all tangle getting together here, and they might, given how aggressive they've been up at the front today. Wood and Stouffer for fourth. Final 20 laps have begun, and now they tick down on the ticker.
Wood almost tagging the wall off of 3. Doug's all the way to the bottom trying to break the draft, and he's got a snake behind him. Stouffer, Bennett, Nito. Nito is very, very close to the back of Bennett, but we've seen that 80 car get stuck. Not really be able to find a way through on anybody, and we suspect that's due to a nice high downforce.
God forbid there's a caution in the last 20 laps of this race. Then you can throw everything we learned out the window, and it's just chaos at that point.
Perhaps Andrew Kinsella is hoping for that, because we really don't think he can make it on a 27-lap run to the checkered flag. He's already got 8 laps on this stint.
Nito following in line. This is the closest battle on the racetrack other than Adams and Cahill for 12th. Pulls even with him, but he's not going to be able to build this run on the inside like that.
And this has been his problem all night. He just gets that slingshot around the outside. He's got the handling car for sure. His cornering speeds, his entry speed seem pretty good. Just can't really go anywhere with it. Still surprised as well that Bennett didn't remain stronger. He'd been running so well. Now sits 6th and almost 15 seconds back of that lead battle, which is coming down slightly. Kraus has taken about a 10th out of out of Kinsella's lead last time through with a burner lap, 41.8.
That was only 200s off his best of the day. Cross the line that time was a little slower than Kinsella, 42.011 to a 42.040, 42.138 for Pavelski. So in order, fastest to slowest, 1 through 3. So Kinsella, this would be the strategy play of the century to do what he has done today. And
yeah, that would be like Rossi Indy 500 level operations right there. Come across the line on fumes, but I'm going to be flabbergasted if that one makes it. This one's getting interesting though. Henry Bennett picks up the position over Chris Stouffer. Now Wilson Nito is on the back.
Yeah, Nito would like to climb back up inside the top 5. Dives into turn 3. The bottom hasn't been kind to Nito here today, but he's going to give it a go. There's a rumble strip down there, pretty bumpy to get with that left front tire, so you kind of want to stay above that yellow line. But he's able to keep that momentum pretty good on the front straightaway with the setup he's got.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more similar setups on the Nito and Stouffer machines as they go side by side now. Nito picks up the position in the purple car over Stouffer, tries the over-under, going to get a nice draft down towards turn 2, but Henry Bennett is checked out. He clearly has less downforce, and it's paid off for him.
I think Stouffer is going to concede that for now. Doesn't feel like he can hang on for the lead. Hey, guess what? 0.4 of a second. It was. Or no, it wasn't. I think there was a timing glitch there with Kinsella flashing out. That scared me for a moment. 1.3 this time by. 3.3 back to Pavelski. So the lead between the front two is closing. It's growing between second and third. Nito and Stouffer down the front straight. They are tight, 2/10. Calm before the storm here on this wall.
This would be a massive breakthrough for Philip Kraus if he can even pull off the podium, but let alone consider the win. He's just, for the defending champion, not had that notable of a start to the season. A 6th, a 4th, yes, at Barber and Homestead, but a 12th at Texas and essentially a DNF, 32nd at Phoenix. So he still sits in the top 10 in 0.6 right now.
Now, if you think about Andrew Kinsella, remember that I picked him to win this race because he looked like he was the fastest earlier in the race. Didn't lead very much at all. But I don't think with the pace he had, and where he was on the track, he wasn't going to win this race. So he pulled a strategy that has put him out front. Track position first. And you're not trying to just win this race on raw pace. Philip Kraus knew that Kinsella knew that he was being outpaced by Philip Kraus. Tried something different, and look now, 1.5 seconds out front and still leading, coming to 14 laps to go. They're counting down. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, and Andrew Kinsella is in control of this. The question becomes, does he have enough burn dinosaur fuel sitting in that tank to take him all the way to the end of this 400-mile race?
That's the problem. He did strategize his way to the front extremely well to put himself in this position, but if it does mean a splash and go, it's all for naught. And he has the most laps on this stint, 14 laps since he's left the pit lane. The next closest car, Andrew Wood, has 13 laps on this stint. They're in 4th, as does Robert Malechka in 12th as he crosses the start-finish line momentarily. Yep, there he is at 13. But a majority of this field has less than 10 laps on their stint. We know they're good. I would even trust maybe the guys with 12 and 13 are good, but 14, that's going to be so many laps.
Once we get down to about 6 laps to go, there will be no opportunity for a restart should we get a caution flag. We have not had a caution.
Something happened with Kraus, is now set 2.7 seconds back. He might have also had an issue. Last lap through, look at that, a 43.2 lap time.
Let's go back and see. Had he already lost the time?
Is this a deja vu? Turn 2.
Trying to see if it was turn 3 first before we go back that far. This is through turn 1. Right here. Whoa, man. That is so sketchy. Through turn 1. Watch this again. Because he almost catches the apron. Just a wiggle and a wobble up the racetrack, but that was enough to cost him time.
Wow.
Oh, Kinsella hits pit lane.
That's what we thought.
That's it. No win for Andrew Kinsella in the Catalyst 317-400. Now shift the focus up front. He wasn't even going to try it. I think he realized it was too far. And you have to wonder, was that a miscalculation? Because I think he could have made that happen. I think he could have.
He would have had to have stretched every single one of the previous stints by at least a lap, if not 2, to make it work. But I think he probably could have. He gets to see the numbers and we don't, so he obviously didn't think it was going to work, and I like that he bit the bullet and pit now because he's got 12, going to be 11 laps to try to make up the most of it.
Well, he
falls
all the way to the last car in the lead lap. I mean, that's hugely detrimental to his race. I mean, that's frustrating, but he knew that it was going to run out and didn't bother with it. Now our focus shifts back to Pavelski.
Pavelski, who has continued to, for a number of laps, he was actually losing time to Kraus. With that scare that Kraus just had, Pavelski has stabilized the gap just a little bit. I'm actually calling into question whether or not Andrew Wood can make it to the finish. He's got 16 laps on this stint, which would be 26 or 27 laps total by the time it's all said and done. Robert Malechka's also in that boat, so there might be a number of cars that have a splash and go coming.
10 laps to go, fuel mileage racing at Pocono. It always seems to happen at this racetrack. It's so big that there's not really a lot of opportunity to save fuel, and if you run out, it is disastrous. 2.5 miles is a long way to go. But for the lead, Kraus was 0.3 of a second slower, and there is the gap. It's 2 seconds between Kraus and Pavelski. He's coming.
You also got to think, when we started this race with 36 cars, you're in the draft a lot. You're jockeying for position a lot. You're checking up on the throttle. Your fuel mileage is its best case, and it only gets worse throughout the race. So if you start off knowing you can do 26, 27 laps, even 25, by the time this field is thinned out to only 17 cars on the lead lap, 20 cars circulating, your fuel mileage is just exponentially worse. So I think a number of guys maybe got bit by their fuel all of a sudden kind of going in the toilet.
Pavelski quicker again. 42.1 to a 42.2 up front. 2 seconds flat. It's still a big gap, but once you get within 1 second, that gap will come down. I don't know. I think Pavelski's a stronger car, but I think with the aero wash and the tire degradation, I'm not sure that Pavelski can get there. But we know that both of these drivers, if anyone is good on fuel, these two up front are the best on fuel of anyone in the top 5 other than Wilson Nito and Henry Bennett. Andrew Wood is the driver you were mentioning. He's the one that's in trouble. I don't know if he can make it to the end. 8 laps to go. 1.9, another 10th gain. He's just chipping away at him.
He's going to need to do it faster than that with only 8 laps to go. That's 40 seconds a lap. That's going to be gone very, very quickly.
You see Kraus already deviating from his line, though. He sees that 75 car getting a little bit closer, and that tells me if I'm Pavelski and I see Kraus start to move offline, that tells me that I'm in his head. I'm looking at my relative screen if I'm Philip Kraus, and I'm starting to kind of panic a little bit. Am I conserving too much? Am I conserving too little? Am I using up my tires? What's my fuel situation? It distracts you to be chased down. So Kraus has got to focus ahead. Stop doing this. He's not within draft range. This is doing nothing for him other than making him go longer down the straightaway. So I think Pavelski has the upper hand here just from a mental standpoint.
I was going to ask earlier on, and now that we have more time to breathe, you might be able to explain it. I know at Indy you go off the wall because the aero wash really affects the car.
Yes.
I didn't notice people doing that here tonight until now. Would you be doing that here, or is that not really a factor in iRacing?
From my understanding, it is now a factor in iRacing as of recently. I don't think it's a big enough effect to really make a huge difference. I think they do that mostly to break the draft from behind than it is to avoid the drag off the wall, which is why they would do that at Indianapolis. So I think Kraus is just doing this because he might feel pressure. And you see Pavelski's not even bothering. Now he's starting to kind of follow a little bit of a delay because you think about where the wind's going to end up. I'm not really sure. I'd love to know how iRacing's draft modeling works, but there's a reason they don't tell anybody that. Because in the real world, you move offline, there's going to be a bit of a delay with how that wind shifts and shuffles. That was almost a fence.
That was. Kraus may be looking in his mirrors. You might be right, but the gap's only 1.4, 1.3. I think
it's coming.
Is that a sniff of a draft?
Almost. Within a second, you'll definitely have it here. 5 laps to go next time by, and they're coming down to the wire here at Pocono. The Catalyst 317-400. The last 10 to 12 miles of this race begin now.
Can Pavelski catch Kraus? Can Andrew Wood make it to the finish? Multiple questions yet to be answered.
1.2 is the gap across the line this time. Hunter and Hunted at the front right now here at Pocono. The tricky triangle has been tricky from a strategy perspective today more than it has been from a dynamics perspective. But 4/10 gain for Pavelski in the last lap alone.
You think that gap on the screen looks big, but that is going to disappear so quickly if that number drops below 1.0 on the left side of your screen. Pavelski at 1.12 right now, 1.03. He's so close. And we know that Pavelski's on a pretty low downforce setup. We've seen him motor past people in other situations. He's only got 5, now 4. This is going to go very, very quickly if he's not on it.
4 to go. Into turn 1 at 215 miles an hour. Andrew Wood hits pit lane, can't make it. Christopher's going to have to hit pit lane. He won't be able to make it. Pavelski 1.1 back. He might be struggling now with a little bit of that aero push, that aero wash here. Last time by, though, still took a chunk out of Kraus's lead. But at 1 second, I just don't know. Is he going to be able to break through that bubble? It's 9/10 now as they enter turn 3. 3 laps ago this time by Pavelski has finally broken in. We're under a second. But he's going to have to make up 2 or 3 tenths this time to have a shot, I think. 3 to go.
And he's so strong through 2 and 3, so I'm not surprised to see him specifically down the run into and out of 2. He just makes up time there. There's Andrew Wood coming back out, goes a lap down on his splash and go, which I think means Robert Malechka will also end up on pit lane before this thing is said and done.
3 miles an hour extra was Pavelski on Kraus and gained another 1/10 and a half. Through turn 2, he gained a whole bunch that time. There's another 1/10 taken out as they enter turn 2. Kraus drops low. This time by is 5 miles left. It's 7/10 of a second now. It's coming down as they come through turn 3, as they come out of the final corner. 2 laps to go here at Pocono, and Pavelski has it down 0.8 of a second across the line. Sailing off into turn number 1. Can Pavelski break through and run down the 19? Kraus is feeling that pressure for sure. Turn 2 is where Pavelski gains all this time. Right here, this is where he gains it all. You can see that car is really wildly loose, but it's fast, 0.6 of a second. Into turn 3, is that too high of a line? This time by, white flag, it's a long ways back. But it's not over until the checkered flag falls. 1 more lap around Pocono for the Catalyst 317-400. Philip Kraus is in command. He started this race back in 11th spot. He has led over half of the laps here today. 88 to be exact. Dragging the 75 onto the apron on the back straightaway for a moment. Pavelski is only half a second away from running down this 19 car, but he's not there yet. Pavelski through turn 2. It is a valiant effort in the last couple laps of this race from the last pit stop onward. Pavelski within a half a second. He needed 5 more laps. He will not get them. Philip Kraus comes out of turn number 3, and Philip Kraus wins the Catalyst 317-400 and the Catalyst 317 Triple Crown round number 1 from Pocono. Pavelski second place, 0.6 back. Bennett third place in the 007. And for the rest of the field, creeping across the line, here's a battle. Andreas Eich and Andrew Kinsella. Probably won't be much of one. Kinsella on 10-lap newer tires. Goes to the inside, will come out the other side in front. And he'll grab 11th, which is not a terrible rebound, all things considered there, Tom. Drag to the line, Cahill and Halaba.
Those two sit second and third in the championship. Kinsella just making that final pass is going to mean he makes up some points. Every little position counts in the closing minutes. But we have a completely fresh podium, 3 fresh faces, not totally new to the podium, but new this season. Philip Kraus picks up his first win. And the rest of the podium, Matt Pavelski and Henry Bennett. Bennett has been there. Pavelski really shining this week for that second place. And Bennett finally breaks the bad luck streak, third.
And celebrating on the Pocono apron here, as he is just waiting to burn it down, and he will. 160 laps, 400 miles. Philip Kraus led over 200 of them and went to victory lane here in Pocono. The tricky triangle is conquered by Kraus. This guy is like a Swiss Army knife. Doesn't matter where you go, he is good. And now a time to roll through our race results. At the top of the order, Kraus in the 19 gets his first victory on the season. Not his first in the series. There will be many more, I'm sure, this year. Pavelski second. You got to feel for him. He did such a great job running Kraus down, but a little bit too little, too late. And think, had he moved that pit stop a lap sooner, things might have been a little different.
I really think that would have been the complete game changer. Henry Bennett third. How about Wilson Nito was stuck in 11th forever. Every time we went back to the purple car, he was in 11th, all the way up to 4th in a late race charge. Chris Stouffer 5th. Tanner Watkins survives for 6th. Ray Kingsbury had a very quiet night as far as broadcast terms go. He's your defending race winner and brings home another top 10. That driver is 5th in the championship, so tonight's a great night for his championship efforts, as is Joe Branch's in 8th.
Joe Branch, a top 10 for him. Tony Schauen. David Adams creeped out a top 10 there at the end. Some shuffling to end the night. Kinsella couldn't quite make it, Tom. He planned a little bit better from the drop of the green flag. He might have been able to win this race. He had the pace to do it, but not the strategy.
He still beat the only guy in the top 5 in points that he needed to, and that's Andreas Eich there in 12th. Keho Haliba, Mike Kitchell, and Robert Malechka with a last lap splash and go potentially, or a ton of fuel saving at the end. Barely hangs on to the final lead lap spot.
He made it 26 laps to make it to that finishing position, so nicely done there. Adam Dock 21st, Matt Kingsbury. Kingsbury's didn't have a great run today, but now we're starting to get into the drivers who had bad days. Brian Carey, Christopher Demerit, points leader coming in. He will likely not be leaving.
Yeah, that's brutal, especially, I mean, no one in the top 5 had a great night. Actually, Ray Kingsbury was the highest finishing car there, but that driver had a 24-point lead coming in. I suspect he might have maybe a 24-point deficit to make up or more next week.
And then down for the bottom of the order here, a handful of drivers from John Downing on, actually Trevor Greenfield on back, did not get a chance to even start this race. Only the top 33 in. AJ Burton, last driver running, out on lap number 2 with crash damage. We've got Matt Pavelski here joining us from second place in the number 75 car. Matt, so close, only a couple tenths away from potentially picking up a victory. Take us through those last couple laps and trying to run down Philip Kraus, just ran out of time.
Yeah, I mean, just to start, I mean, the car is incredible. Everybody at IFFG did a great job with the strategy. I mean, Brendan, AJ, Chris, they were a huge help tonight. Yeah, I mean, had a lot of ground to get up on Phil, especially, I mean, I think we were 9 seconds back when I got clear of that middle pack. And we kind of knew right around the time of the last pit stop that it would take a few mistakes or some lap traffic to get up to Phil, because I think we lost like one of those cars back there. I think I lost like a couple seconds, 3 seconds, just getting stuck battling. I don't know what's going on with that, but just really kind of hoping for a mistake. I mean, the draft is worth something, but I mean, if you drive defensively enough in turn 3, you can kind of kill any bit of run you get down the front straightaway. So.
Well, a really strong night to come home in second. As we look ahead on the schedule, we've got a couple more of these Triple Crown events coming later in the season. But next, we head to Detroit Belle Isle on March 14th. Your thoughts on Detroit and handling the street course in this number 75?
I mean, I'm excited for it. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. I'm, figuring out some new equipment especially on the road courses. So it's going to be a little bit of a, I'll just say like an experiment getting ready for it. But I mean, if I can run it and I'm there, then I mean, that'll be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for that.
Matt, hey, congratulations. A second place, 6/10 short of a victory, but a strong run there. Had a lot of pace, almost a victory. P2. Thanks for talking.
Thank you.
Move on now to Philip Kraus, the race winner in the 19. Not a unfamiliar place to be in victory lane, Philip, but that was a nail biter for us up here in the booth with Matt running you down in the closing laps. Take us through your night. You led 88 laps tonight, but a lot of them seemed pretty easy, but those last 10 laps, I bet you were sweating.
Yeah, it was definitely wasn't a conventional speedway race. I'd say ever since that last caution, once I broke a bit of a lead after that restart, from then forward, once I was like 3 seconds ahead of Kinsella, I had to go mix 4 to make it to the end of the race. So it was a bit nail-biting watching the fuel number every lap, seeing, am I close? Am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? And I had Matt in my ear telling me every lap if I'm going to make it or not. And luckily for that last run there, I had enough fuel to give a bit more beans. Otherwise, I think Matt would have got me there.
Well, he didn't get you. You managed to win the first round of the Triple Crown. You got 2 more of these races coming up, including a full-distance Indy 500. How confident do you feel that you could pick up that $100 extra check and win all 3?
Well, I mean, last time in Indianapolis, I only made it about 10 laps, so can't be any worse than that, hopefully. Looks like we've found something on the speedways this round, because LLM as a team usually struggles on these tracks, but we had a really good package here today.
Philip Kraus, winner for the Catalyst 317-400. Philip, congratulations. We'll see you next round.
Yeah, thank you.
Henry Bennett finished in 3rd place tonight behind Matt Pavelski and Philip Kraus. Henry led some laps early, started 3rd, finished 3rd. At the end of the day, a podium. Pretty happy with that, or wish he could have been 2 spots better?
Well, after this, the races earlier this season, last race Texas, I'm just glad to finish an oval. happy with third. I can't really say it was my strategy call. I just ended up saving fuel by ending up being shuffled back in traffic. So yeah, happy it turned out okay. Sometimes the luck goes your way, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, the next round we've got Detroit, Belle Isle coming up on March 14th, and a trip to Chicagoland, and then to Richmond. Of the next three, Detroit, Chicago, or Richmond, which of the three is your best chance of going to victory lane?
I'm okay at road, but I know Adam and Phil, they're better than me. Unless I put in like 10 times as much practice as them, then I should be finishing behind them. So the best at the third, maybe a third. Chicago, that's going to be a bit of a pack race, I think. And then Richmond, I'm not sure. It just depends how you qualify there and the strategy.
Well, a third place tonight after starting in third. A long run, led some laps led earlier in the race, 37 of them to be exact, Henry. Congratulations, P3. We'll see you at Detroit. All right, Tom, wrapping things up here from Pocono, Pennsylvania. A wild start to the night, a handful of cautions, only 4 though. Then we went into a long green flag run all the way to the end. And at the end of the night, it was Philip Kraus standing top the winner's podium after claiming the victory in the Catalyst 317-400, the first of our Triple Crown events. Your final thoughts here on this race?
Well, I just look at, if you have to win once, when do you win? And we know that Philip Kraus won the championship last year with 1 win to his name. Tonight was 1.5 points, and with that, my rough calculations estimate Andreas Eick and Philip Kraus will be nearly tied on the championship coming into the next round at the top of the board. They've leapfrogged everybody else because Philip Kraus made it happen when it needed to happen. So he clawed his way back towards the front of that championship, puts himself back in contention, and that's just a massive effort. So we got a little comfortable the first couple rounds with a very familiar podium. First 4 of 17 rounds, there's a long way to go.
I tell you, it's competitive, and it's not going to be the same people up front all day long. Tom, thanks for joining me. Next round will be March 14th at Detroit Belle Isle, our second time on a road course, a much different road course, actually, from our first at Barber Motorsports Park. That was a very fast-flowing track, now very point and shoot, and really, really high risk with the concrete around there. That'll be it for the Coca-Cola Bottling Company of Kokomo, Indiana, Indy Elite Series for the Catalyst 317-400. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks on March 14th for the next road course on the schedule and our 2nd and 6th round of the season. We'll see you.